Greetings, I'm your host, Jason Myles, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. If you are a returning listener or subscriber, so glad to have you back. It's been a long week. So long of a week that we will not be doing a champagne room tonight. Free champagne. Champagne's on the house. Oh! If you are new to the channel, welcome. So glad to have you here. If you enjoy what you'll be hearing tonight on the show, on your way out, leave a like and subscribe. It's a passive gesture. It goes a long way. Also, want to remind people, the date is coming up so quickly. I'm lagging on getting my plane tickets. I hope it's set aside in your calendar. And that date is June 8th. Where we'll be doing Beyond the Black Jacobins, CLR James and the Struggle for Socialism in America. Keynote speaker Adolph Reed, the Pascal Robert, what? Daniel Tutt, Derek Varn, hosted by me, Jason Myles. Wherever you are watching or listening to the show, there should be links in the description. If you have any issues with those links, let me know, and I will send you a link personally. We've just added a VIP event after the show. You'll be able to ask Pascal anything you want to ask him. I'm sure there's so much you guys want to ask Pascal. We are making sure that he will not be leaving the event early. We're going to glue him to a chair. You can ask him all the questions that you want. Derek Varn will be there. You might, ask questions at your own risk with that one. He's a wily fellow. Be careful with him. But let's bring in this very esteemed panel we have tonight. Starting off with my homie, my dog, my co-host, the man of the Mau Mau Hour, the Pascal Robert.
Peace and greetings to the chat. Peace and greetings to the audience. Peace and greetings, Jason Myles.
How are you?
All right.
Thank you very much for coming on the show with me tonight. Also, part of the TIR family, even though he likes to not claim that because he wants to keep his job. Please welcome, coming from the great state of Utah, C. Derek Varn.
Hi, and I'm part of the crew. I don't know what else you guys want. I'm normally just talking crap about your audience more than worried about my job. But
okay. Well, then that's a whole different. That's fine. That's totally fine. I'd like to give a big shout out to this gentleman coming on, who I know he wouldn't appreciate me calling him this, but he's kind of an expert in these matters that we're going to be talking about tonight. When I first found this article, he was the first person I sent it to, probably at 1 a.m. Please welcome New York Times and Atlantic columnist Bertrand Cooper.
That's good, y'all. I think you actually got this one to me at a reasonable hour. It wasn't during one of the midnight rants. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about this one because I have mixed feelings about the Alice term. It could go well, it could go badly, but yeah, I'm sure we'll get into it.
We're going to get into that because I do feel like everything I've found about this, that's been written about this, is in a lot of nonprofit literature that I sent you guys, and then the Business Insider. So I haven't been seeing a lot of the left publications talking about this unless I missed it. Are you an Alice? Are you or anyone in your friend or family group an Alice? If you're a Gen Xer, like the majority of our panel tonight, the name Alice probably reminds you of the author of The Color Purple or early 80s television sitcom starring Linda Lavin. Ironically enough, the term Alice has a lot more to do with the central character of the fictional Mel's Diner waitress and her coworkers than you think. ALICE is an acronym for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed. People and families that live in poverty, yet because they maintain some level of full-time employment, they don't qualify for government assistance. To give you some statistics on this sadly rising trend, of the 920 million households in the US in the year 2021, 13% earned below the federal poverty level. 29% were ALICE in households that earned above the federal poverty level, but not enough to afford the basics in the communities where they live. Together, 42% of households in the US were below the ALICE threshold, poverty plus ALICE divided by total households. While the COVID-19 pandemic brought employment shifts, health struggles, and school business closures in 2021, it also spurred unprecedented public assistance through pandemic relief measures. Before the pandemic in 2019, 0 households were below the ALICE threshold. By 2021, that number had changed to 0. Oh, I messed up on the numbers there when I when I wrote that down. Tonight we'll be discussing this. I wanted to start off with you, Bert. A lot of your work has to do with the working poor, as you come from a situation like the one we're discussing today. As we approach the 2024 presidential election, if there's one issue that has arisen in any sort of political discourse, it is the urban blight of drug-addicted homeless and attempting to tie that to rising property crime rates. Why do you feel this very large section of Americans don't get discussed?
So, and hopefully we're going to get a chance to get into the ALICE term because, you know, for this is Revolution audience, I'm sure several folks are even familiar with the terms, but just when we're attempting to talk about, you know, economic hardship in the U.S., we have the official federal definition of poverty. We have the supplemental definition of poverty, which is also coming from the federal government. And then, you know, we can use this ALICE definition. There's a lot of definitions in the works and they don't all overlap. But in terms of, you know, why are we not focused on how are we defined this large segment of the poor? For me, I think that's the way it's been orchestrated, you know, by Democrats and Republicans. So going to Republicans, which is just easy, they have decided to frame economic hardship primarily as a personal failure, that if you just put your nose to the grindstone, eventually you can work your way out of it. And they've really just kind of been straightforward about that. Poverty is mostly a problem of laziness or a problem of bad morals or a problem of parents, blah, 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 blah. Everybody listening to this already knows this. For Democrats, it's a little bit more complicated. And the argument I would make here is that there's a bit of sleight of hand where over the past decade, you know, there was a brief moment where we felt like we were talking about deaths of despair, the opioid crisis. There was this way of talking about white poverty. And that's relevant because out of the 40 or so million Americans living under the federal definition of poverty, you know, some 27 million, some close to 30 million are going to be white. Brief moment where we were willing to talk about them among Democrats or just cookie cutter fucking liberals. That turned very quickly, especially with Trump. All of those folks became deplorables. They were pushed off to the side. Okay, well, that still leaves us with the black and brown poor folk. Very specific things happened with the whole racial discourse, and this is the sleight of hand part. We had so much writing saying that Black poverty, for example, was different from other types of poverty, and that it particularly had to do with race and not class. And we were able to push this idea that as long as you focused on race issues, you were killing two birds with one stone. So you were helping Black people, but you were also solving the only poverty you even cared about. And so all of us have been subject to whatever Democrat or liberal making the same speech where they say, you know, I care about people, you know, who are marginalized because of race, gender, sexual orientation. Then normally poverty comes at the end, and poverty's been stripped away of like any feature other than just pores out there. And So for a lot of Democrats and a lot of liberals, as long as you're focusing on a candidate or a policy that is, say, anti-racist, you're supposed to be just solving poverty. And of course, you don't have to care about that huge swath of white poverty because those folks are horrible. That would be my take why it just is easy to brush off, and we could go from there. But I love talk.
Pascal.
Yeah, I think one of the problems that we have here is that I think Bertrand is absolutely correct in one sense, in both senses actually, in that how he frames the way conservatives deal with the issue of poverty, and that it's an issue of personal responsibility. But one of the things that I find problematic with the liberals is that they frame it in a way that is used to increase their multicultural bona fides, but obscure the actual problem of poverty. And I think that part of the problems that liberals are stuck in is that they are literally trying to appeal to a more upscale audience. In terms of, you look at the demographics of the Democratic Party, they're largely appealing more and more to college-educated sectors. They're losing the white working class. They're losing the working class overall. They're losing the working poor overall. And more, they're trying to appeal to college-educated voters. And I think one of the ways they're doing that is that they're actually trying to intentionally purge, not only in terms of rhetoric, but also in terms of policy, any concerns with issues dealing with poor folk, while using that double speak of, oh, we care about the working class or the middle class, when in reality, their policies are still rooted in neoliberalism.
I mean, there's a lot to talk about here. There's a lot that's driving this. Income inequality tends to actually slightly increase under Democrats, although the Democrats these days are advertising that the economy does better than them under their tutelage in recent studies, mostly because they're more willing to give out patronage, direct patronage as opposed to indirect patronage through tax cuts. We definitely see this with Obama. I would say that Democrats are also engaged in the same kind of neoliberal shenanigans, with the idea that we need to be very clear what neoliberalism is, which is public-private partnerships that do not benefit the majority of the population. So as opposed to Fordist public-private partnerships where the working class was at least at the table in negotiations through union arbitrage, after the 1970s is not true. But after 2007, there's a new element of it that we do have to look at, which is the way QE and other kinds of debt leveraging allowed for massive accumulations of wealth through both venture capital and direct government subsidy that really we hadn't seen that much before in the earlier half of the neoliberal period. We saw massive accumulations of wealth, but we weren't seeing them, the government help establish basically tech monopolies and other things that are almost quasi-governmental forms. The other thing we've seen is that household income has largely been stagnant since 1978 in terms of what the purchasing power of that is. I can give you some stats so get you what I'm talking about. The average income for a household in 1980 was $21,000. Today, that is worth about $84,000. If you look at the average household income, I should be very clear here. The median household income of families, it's, when adjusted for inflation, it's pretty much the same or slightly lower than the purchasing power at 1980s level. But you know what's not the same? Education cost, healthcare, those things we've all been talking about for 20 years, about how they've outpaced general inflation, and they're not actually even factored into the inflation rate. Homeownership since 2015 has been in a similar dynamic. Today, the current interest rates actually favor people who can buy homes direct in cash for investment. So any hope that people thought that raising the interest rate would lower home prices by decreasing demand has been missing out on the fact that there's large investment companies with large chunks of cash who can just buy these properties outright and do. So that also distorts this. Since the 80s, the government's been very good at bracketing out whatever it doesn't want to look at in terms of how it factors inflation. So whatever the inflation numbers are, you should probably add 2% to them. So generally from the period of the mid 90s all the way to about 3 years ago, inflation was about 3% nominal and probably about 5 to 6% real. Today we're at about 4% nominal and about 8 to 9% real, but we've gone almost as high as 10% in the last 3 years. And that's interesting to me. When you look also at federal poverty line adjustments, the poverty line in 1982, when we started talking about this, was $4,680 per person. All right. Now, today, it is $15,000 roughly. I want you to do some math on that and realize that that's not actually all that close to the inflation levels. Also, there's no place in the country now where you could even rent a room with that kind of money. What?
Did you want to add something, Bert?
Yeah, no. I mean, everything Vaughn was saying was cool. Can keep going, but I did think that was a good point to talk about these definitions that are in contention here, because going back to 1963, when government statistician named Molly Orshansky comes up with the official poverty measure, which is the one that we're still adjusting based on the consumer price index for poor folks, or that's how we're defining, like, that's your big poverty number that gets reported by the government. She faced this push, this general pushback that most Americans are familiar with, which is nobody really wants to agree on how much money is enough money. No one, for example, ever wants to say when they've made it and they are officially rich. Everyone resists saying they have enough to be rich. There's not a lot of agreement there. And so there's actually a quote from her where she says, if we can't agree more or less on how much is enough, we should at least be able to agree on how much is too little. And with that as the guiding star, she makes food and basically a minimally nutritious diet. And I can't emphasize minimally enough here, like down to the fact that you can look up the year that she was doing this. U.S. Department of Agriculture is like counting how many eggs a pregnant woman needs to sustain herself along with other foods. So there's a whole matrix here. They're calculating literally how much you need just to stay the fuck alive, at a barely nutrition level. And that grocery bill gets multiplied by 3. And if you earn less than that, you're in poverty. Our poverty definition is extremely, extremely severe, but from the statistician's point of view, it does create kind of this useful variable in that starvation is going to be about the same in Illinois, in Indiana. You can compare it to rural India. Starvation does not become more luxurious depending on where you go. But it creates this really severe definition that's far below what most people think would be enough to have a decent life. So then they add to this, they come up with the supplemental poverty measure. And looking at that, they're like, all right, well, let's look at the actual cost of food, clothing, shelter. And we're going to add in utilities, and we're going to base it on certain regions and adjust it that way. And we're also going to include, SNAP and any cash that you're getting from the government. Ends up being only 1% different from like the poverty measure. It's different, but unless the government really, increases how much aid it's giving folks, which it did during the pandemic and really proved that you could give enough aid to dramatically reduce poverty, or for children, basically eliminate it. Outside of that, one-off, they're neck and neck. When we get to A.L.I.C.E, the reason things increase a lot is because Alice has a different mindset, which is, well, what if we made the bar, like, we're trying to estimate what do you need to have a quality of life that actually allows you to integrate into the workforce? And so they're including everything that the other measures include, but they're also including, transportation, they're including childcare, they're including health insurance. They're also planning for you to have 10% savings on your budget. So you have enough money in your savings to survive 3 months with no income coming in. And they're also adjusting this by county. So it's a much higher standard, but politically speaking, if you were to wonder like, oh, why don't the Alice's rise up? These folks have very, very different lives. Almost none of the things that we think of as afflicting poor people, say like crime rates in their neighborhood or rate of incarceration, what the folks living at that starvation level experience in terms of those rates is going to be very different. The one thing you sent all of us, or sent me at least, Jason, was looking at Alice's in New Jersey.
Mhm.
For them, the cutoff was $74,000 a year. So if you're making $74,000 a year, you can be financially restricted. You can have all these things that Alice talks about, but it's a very different life and a very different culture that comes out of that compared to a family that's living on less than 20,000. And it's not immediately what you would think of as like a political unit that can come together and kind of join forces. It could happen, but there's some difficulties, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I think some things we always have to, what the hell, deal with when we talk about Alice's and whatnot is that, I'm distracted now. I had a good point. The
It was Gene's new hair.
Well, one thing I will say that I don't see this as a criticism of Alice. In fact, if anything, I think it's like maybe anemic. But we do have to realize that baseline that Alice is assuming is based off of like the family wage model of the 1950s, basically being applicable to everyone. And that existed for all of 15 years in the United States. And the conditions in which that existed, just geopolitically, are actually quite weird. During that, there's a reason why that happens in the post World War II boom. You have the Marshall Plan, so you have all this excess production being sent to Europe, so that we don't actually start driving our own prices down with a glut of overproduction. We have the capture of 48% of the world's wealth in one country, not because we took it, although we were taking it too. I mean, we'd already probably taken a lot of it, but because all the other wealth in the world was kind of blown up literally during World War II. And so that baseline norm is actually from a very weird blip in American history. That tends to be the blip the left and the right, ironically, base most of their cultural and economic assumptions off of, because it's also the generation that gave us the baby boom, and most of our institutions today are based off of that. Like literally, we changed our school system, we changed our healthcare system, everything was around the baby boom when it happened after World War II. So, I always talk about like age is a material condition, and at least one generation is materially different than all the others, and that is the baby boomers. Which is not to say there aren't poor baby boomers and stuff. Before people get at me, there's a lot of baby boomers dying younger today than their grandparents did. But as a generational cohort, they had the most wealth starting out as any cohort has ever had on the planet, if they were born in the United States. So there's all that. And so the Alice thing is an attempt to kind of like statistic your way back to that as a norm. You do need about 70 to 90K, or if you're in California, probably about 110K
more.
Yeah. Well, I've seen the upper average of a living wage if you averaged it out for the United States. And we need to put a big bracket. Bertrand was right when bringing all this up, that there's radical differences in cost of living within the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's hugely divergent. But you probably need about 190K to live a middle-class lifestyle anywhere in the United States. Like if you were just to say, I'm going to safely pick a number that's for everywhere, you could live a middle-class lifestyle in any area in the US. it would be at the top end of the 100K range. So you're between 160 and 190K. That's crazy to me because we used to think of six figures as like the beginning of a wealthy income. It's not anymore. The other thing is these inflation indexes are highly distorting. I'll give you an example of that. And we've talked about like inflation, and I think the height of inflation in July of 2022 was an annual increase of about 9 to 10%, at least nominal. But housing inflation the year before was 20% a year. But even when we didn't have super bad housing inflation, the housing cost average has always been 2 to 3% higher than general inflation. So each year there's a bigger and bigger gap between general cost and housing cost. So there's all that. And the only time we've seen dips in for example, general economic inequity. So like when did economic inequality get better in the United States in the last 20 years? The Great Recession. All right. Like, and that was downward for everybody, but it disproportionately hit certain groups of people. When we talk about the racial wealth gap, when you adjust out all the super rich people and you're no longer comparing like rich black folks to rich white folks, where you have a 250-year accumulation difference, the difference in wealth, in net wealth, is about 90 to 120K. You know what explains that? Home values and being in black communities being disproportionately hit in 2009. Almost, you can explain almost all of it in that. So by focusing on that and not even focusing on the housing policy that undergirds it, you can completely miss everything that's going on. Yes, there's a pretty severe wealth gap between net average white people and net average black people. But once you adjust for home ownership and the home ownership patterns that emerged after the Great Recession, you can explain all of it. All right. So, redlining plays into that too. Now so all these things are wild to me. And also some of these statistics are very hard to get. Like, so if I try to look for food inflation in specific, for like specific regions, I have trouble finding it. Like, I'll get like the consumer price index, which brackets out a lot. I'll get another inflation, which will throw food back into that. I mean, one of the things about the consumer price index is that it's based off of non-essential goods, essentially. So the consumer price index, like, is about like things that are not food, housing, shelter, education, or healthcare. So you know what most people actually spend money on. And for a long time in the United States, the way that the right would talk about this is we got cheaper consumer goods, but all the essentials of life got more and more expensive. Now, I'm going to add another thing that makes this A.L.I.C.E category more interesting and difficult to talk about. We have lost a whole lot of people from the workforce, and there's the obvious ones. There's all the people who died from COVID. There's the massive retirement of baby boomers who were actually above retirement age anyway, but still working, which COVID pushed out of the job market. There's the decrease in immigration, but there's also a massive leaving of women from the workforce. Like in 2019, if I said the average worker, and I think I said this to you, Jason, that the average worker was likely to be a woman and flip a coin if they were of color or not, right?
Yeah.
Well, today that's not true. Today the average worker is likely to be a man. Women are not even factored into the unemployment rates because they're not seeking employment, because the cost of childcare has risen astronomically. So right now, for example, in a lot of states, childcare after the Biden subsidies for it went away, is outpacing the cost of college per year.
Well, let's Springfield.
Greetings, everybody. I hope you're doing well tonight. I feel honored to be on this panel of black men. Um, Obviously, I'm including Vaughn in that too. Um, yeah, I mean, I think Vaughn's making some really important points there. I mean, number one, there is a huge difference across the country in what you get for your money. So, I know my salary is significantly lower than people, for example, teaching in universities in Philadelphia or New York, but my standard of living is not particularly different due to the fact that, like, the cost of everything is so much higher. Now, if you can get a nice job that subsidizes those things, subsidizes childcare, especially, that's a big deal. But yeah, it really comes down to, as Vaughn points out, there are sort of key fundamentals of life in the United States that have just become so inflated over recent years, and there seems to be no rhyme or reason to it. I mean, so for example, I'll give you a bit of personal information. My mortgage is $800 a month. That's $800 a month, which is extremely low, right? Because when I purchased a house here in Springfield, house prices were extremely low. For God knows what reason, in the last 5 years, things have gone through the roof. You've got the higher interest rates, so suddenly becomes a lot more difficult for people to purchase houses because they're dealing with a 7% interest rate as opposed to a 3% interest rate. House prices are going up, and of course rentals are going up. Yeah, did I buy a U-Haul? $800 a month. I will never move probably because of that. I will live in this house till I die.
A room in Salt Lake City, Gene, the average now is $1,000. Not for a one-room studio apartment. It's just a room in a house. Like,
no, I get 800. It's truly insane. For $800 a month, I have like a 3-bedroom house with a garden, but increasingly the parts of the country where that was feasible is disappearing, right? Yeah, like people are lots of people, for example, have started retiring to Springfield, Missouri, because like they sell up their property in California, and then they suddenly move to Springfield. What, they have $500,000 for the house, that the tiny little house that they have? Well, what can you get for $500,000 in Springfield? You can get a mansion, right? So people like move around the country. So we have we have housing, which is extremely difficult. The interest rate makes it difficult to buy, so people are forced into renting, and that pushes up the rental
price. The qualifications make it difficult for people to buy as well. We have to talk about that. The credit qualifications change so much.
There's also a quick aside. Yeah. If the house is too low, no bank is even interested in giving you a loan for it, because they won't make that much money off over the long term. So below a certain threshold of making money off of you, no one's going to give you a loan.
That is very true. For bringing that up, there is loan minimums.
So you have these costs of you have these difficult costs of houses. You have these higher interest rates, and then you have people who are jacking up the rents. The rents here, again, I can speak only for Springfield. When I moved here, in this neighborhood, rents, you get a place for $700, $800. Now you're looking at $2,000. That's like only in the space of 7-8 years. That's a huge jump, and we haven't gone up in 50%. Now, when it comes to the childcare is extortionate. There is no. People are working one whole salary, for example, to just pay for childcare so that their kids can go to pre-K. And it's a long period of time. So, for example, in the UK, children go to primary school ages 4 and 5. But, you're dealing with kids only go to public schools when it gets to, when you get to 5, 6. So you have a shortage of childcare. Childcare is expensive. It's a labor-intensive job, and the people who do it are extremely low paid anyway. Ironically, you have these companies coming in and doing it, and because of the decline of multi-generational living, the fact that people move around the country or move around the world, in my case, you don't have the social and family networks upon which you can rely to offset the cost of childcare. So people have a choice. People don't have a choice. They have to rely on childcare. So you're kind of in a catch-22. I mean, one of my friends was planning to teach a class over the summer, but then couldn't afford the childcare to cover teaching the class over the summer, and was like, I can't teach this class because the pay I'm going to get is all going to go into the childcare. So why should I do that? Like why am I going to work just to pay for someone to look after my kid? I might as well spend time with my kid. So you have these things there are a lot of things in the US that are cheap. You have cheap food generally. I know
Television.
people cheap television, petrol is cheap, cars are cheap. Life is a lot cheaper than the UK, which is just insane. People can't live in the UK because of the inflation. But there are these kind of core things of shelter and childcare, which are just absolutely hammering people, and hammering people who have like good middle class jobs. The average salary here in Springfield is 45,000, which you can kind of survive on here. But how sustainable is that going to be in the long term if suddenly all the house prices go up? Because what was sustained the low wage economy here was the fact that people didn't, you could rent a house for $500 a month, right? A whole house, right? You could get a mortgage and have an $800 a month or mortgage on a house, right? But the places where you can do that, they're the places that nobody wants to live. I mean, I don't want to live here, but I do. But but then people go like, oh fuck it, I'll go move to this shitty place because at least I can have a big house. And then boom, everything else goes up. So there's kind of like, it's like musical chairs of the country, and the chairs are moving further and further away. It becomes increasingly impractical. So I don't know what's going to happen here, but there is just this fundamental problem that people, what's what people call the working poor, right? You work your ass off all day, and at the end of the month you're still in debt.
I mean, reading some of these, the few things I was able to find about these, the Alice moniker, a lot of people were just kind of one step away from being homeless, which was fast. God forbid anybody had. These are also people that don't have medical benefits. Childcare is constantly an issue. Do you guys think in the West, multi-generational living is looked on as a negative thing?
It's only been renormalized in the last 10, 15 years.
But has it really been normalized, or is it something that people accept? Because it does.
It's people accept. I mean, but even the acceptance of it is new. I tell people who are just 10 years. I mean, there's a couple things about this. I always talk about like understanding the difference between wealth versus income. There are people who make less income than me, but they can go stay with their families for 3 years and live at home and be supported by their families because their families have the generational wealth to do that. A lot of leftist fail sons are that. Whereas like the house that I come from isn't big enough for me to go back to it, even if I wanted to. I mean, I could now that like half my family's gone, but the other thing that is interesting about that is it would have never occurred to us to do for anything longer than a few months. And even I and I was worked to do it. I left home at 16, but I had to go back in the aughts multiple times as I got hit by recession cycles. So and sleep on a couch. I think we'll see a return to that. The idea that like young people can go off now in college without taking out a bunch of loans and go live somewhere just seems completely unbelievable. Another thing that I think we have to look at. I mean, Gene was talking about cars being cheap here. They were cheap here. They have gone up 21% since pre-pandemic levels. I mean, that's an insane rate of inflation. And some of that's U.S. government policy. For example, we tariff the shit out of cheap Chinese electric cars, which would outcompete gas cars in our current market, but we keep them out of the country. So there's a lot going on here. Another thing to look at when we look at all this, and like really sit with, is that even in the place like, so I'm here in Utah, we have finally curbed our home and in rental inflation, more our rental inflation than our home inflation, quite frankly. But there's just new stuff going up every day. But this standard that you see in the United States of like a free floating home, like even if you have the money, you're probably not getting that now. In a lot of cities, you have to live in a place that's relatively underdeveloped to have that available to you. And the problem that we have, you know, we always talk about gentrification, and by gentrification, we should say capitalism, because if you don't gentrify something under capitalism, it'll completely fall apart and become a shithole. But sorry, people. This has always been something I've found unaddressed.
Gentrifier,
Yeah.
white devil gentrifier, gentrifying the Mormons out of Utah.
Well, I actually, to be fair, I live in the Latin neighborhood, so I technically probably am a gentrifier. But the thing that I find really fascinating and disturbing about all this is that these costs are rising faster than these incomes are by a lot, and in the hot areas, it keeps on moving where the hot areas are. Like in the aughts, it was the Southeast. Now it's the Mountain West. Unfortunately, a lot of the places where people are moving to retire actually don't have the infrastructure for them. And this is another thing we haven't talked about. If you move to one of those cheap places, you give up a shit ton of social infrastructure, including shit like, I don't know, we've been closing hospitals and schools and shit everywhere. So you might be traveling 45 minutes to a hospital or an hour to a hospital. There's all kinds of other things that increase your cost.
One throw like I love the several of Arn's points, but one of the big ones is just the thing about the wealth is I don't even think Alice has a really great way to measure generational wealth, or the fact that there's going to be a big transfer coming, or really how to deal with the fact that some people have corners that they can still cut. And I'm not saying that they should have to cut those corners, but it's there's a lot left there. But something that's challenging with the Alice framework for me is that I wish to a large degree that it would just be upfront and say we think that more Americans should have a higher standard of living, as opposed to this attempt to say, here's poverty. And they even use this word at different points: undercount, understatement, understated. It's like we have these poor folks, but actually we have much more poor than we thought. And Matthew Desmond does the same thing in his book, Poverty by America. I would rather be very upfront and say, actually, we have this other group that is also economically constrained, and it's a bad situation. It is a bad quality of life, because my fear is I already know that a lot of Americans are chomping at the bit to basically be able to say, like, I'm having the worst time ever. I'm just as bad off as everyone else. We're in the same group. I should get my benefits. I'm not necessarily saying that they get what they deserve, because they don't, but this framework really allows a lot of people to, again, feel like they are the main person of the story. It can be a way of pushing off, acknowledging how far down the people under the old definitions of poverty are. And this is something you've brought up with different discussions, Jason, mostly around the homeless. But, you know, if we say there's this group of people making 70, 80, pick 90,000 if you want, who are still having a terrible life because this inflation, this constrained market, anything we say about them and saying it's actually worse than we thought is going to be true about these people at the bottom who, if you're looking at poverty, you know, since 1980, only about half of people earn more than their parents. So we're dealing almost solidly with, you know, second generation poor folks. The number across decades is borders on flat. Like, we are not lifting people out of poverty very often. So everything that's getting worse for these people in terms of inflation is getting worse for them. The reason why I mentioned you, Jason, the homeless, is like, this is not it's not easy to understand that, like, the amount of money you would need to support this whole group is really lopsided. The amount of money you might need to dump into government resources for people making $70,000 a year to be able to cover these other things, it's probably smaller than the amount of infrastructure, the amount of other resources, the amount of admin you would need to do anything for these poor folk. And I always feel like when we try to lump it into one word so that we can give everybody the sympathy that we already allot for the poor, what ends up is these policy plans that really only have sufficient legs and strength to help people who are less in need. And it can distract from like how much you really need if you're going to have an actual go at poverty. I think in terms of, say, education, you know, there's kids who were in poverty during that, you know, whole 3 years where school was very spotty. And because of the homes they were going back to, that was basically a straight 3 years of zero school. That's their gap. So normally kids, like, their skills melt over the summer, especially if they're in a home that doesn't do a lot of learning outside of like school. The gap that you have to fix for the kids who were like poor and just going home to a really unenriched environment is so much bigger than the other kids going through the same experience, but we're coming home to a rich experience. And if you just lump them in one word, it's like whatever policy you're coming out with, it is not going to be powered enough for the people at the very bottom of that group.
Pascal?
Yeah, go ahead, Pascal.
One of the things that I noticed is that when talking about this term ALICE, it's very NGO oriented in that, that the people who are promoting it seem to be all revolving around these nonprofits. And I asked myself, is this really a think tank way of trying to deal with poverty, to make it a way in which we're actually not dealing with poverty at all, but as Bertrand says, we're really trying to address the needs of what we know are people who are being proletarianized, but at the same time want to live a middle-class lifestyle.
I would go further than that. I mean, a lot of these people aren't even being proletarianized; they're being lumpenized. Whenever we use the word precariat, what we should say is lumpen. I know we don't say lumpen because it has negative connotations and people are cowards, but it is. And I've been talking about this for a while. So yeah, we have large parts of, I mean, you know who's being proletarianized, like in the United States, is the bottom end of the PMC, right? A class I'm not going to go into my, criticisms of that class category, but let's just take it as a social category right now, because we know what we're talking about then, and I can agree to that. Those people are being proletarianized. You see it in the fact that they've mostly moved as a category of people, except for the top 10% of them who are like a fiduciary elite, into wage relations where they used to be petite bourgeois. They used to own their own business. You see this across the board. You see it with doctors. You see it with dentists. You see it increasingly. The overhead for that's too expensive. So they've moved from being small business holders into being wage earners. Now, they're still elite labor aristocratic wage earners, so we can still talk about it as a social category, but that's what they are. Now, everyone else, gig work, all that shit, is increasing precarity. Increasing precarity comes with it the social pathologies related to that. Marxists have historically not wanted to organize the lumpen because we don't know how to deal with their problems. All right. Like, it's not just about empowering the poor for Marxists, because it's like, well, these people don't have skills either. They can't reproduce society. In fact, they're given to dependency schemes. Like, you can buy them off, and that was part of the Marxist like way of viewing the lumpen. It wasn't because they even thought that. I mean, Marx does talk about it in moral terms a little bit, but that was where it's from. So I want to talk about that a little bit, but I also want to talk about something else that Bertrand hit on and Pascal both hit on that I really want to point out. A lot of these A.L.I.C.E people have access to debt. All right. Now, I say that we have an incredible explosion of indebtedness We had a decrease of it during COVID, during the 2 years of COVID support. It's like come back with a vengeance and almost tripled in 2 years because people are making ends meet with credit cards, and whatnot. But the poor, the people at that poverty line, do not have access to debt. No one will give them money unless it's payday loan shit, which will destroy them.
Or credit
So-
cards that are, pretty much the equivalent of scams. You're paying up front.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
massive fees
Those
for even using them.
yeah, those like huge fees, 30%, 35% interest right now.
Yeah.
And you also need to deposit $500 in an account to have access to it. And that's not also dealing with the fact that, and liberals used to talk about this a lot more in the the aftermath of the Great Recession. I do remember this, but like all the costs of being poor. Fuck, getting paid is hard if you don't have a bank account.
If you don't have a bank account, I didn't have a bank
Right.
account for like 6 years.
I've been running through gigs, and almost all of them work strictly with direct deposit. And if I were to be like, oh, I need some other method, it would be a huge.
Oh, there's the thing, Bert. For the last over 10 years, you can get direct deposit on your prepaid check card. But how much are you losing with your direct deposit, with your prepaid check card that you get charged for every time you use it?
And there's a lot of people making money off this kind of stuff. I mean, and it's not just in the United States. Look at what happened in India when they they tried to move away from these cashless economies. It extremely, it really hurt the kind of most impoverished people in the country who relied on cash. So the changing nature of money in society, like the cost of being poor is is increasingly difficult because we are increasingly living in a kind of cashless society, and the only people who like have to deal in cash day in day out are the extremely poor people who don't have access to banking services. Hence, for example, something like post office banking would be actually a really great boom for people because it would allow access to these banking services
in everywhere, and they're all over neighborhoods. They're
all
in
over the neighborhoods.
poor neighborhoods. I grew up in a city where there was no bank in it.
So you need, so access to bank. I mean, because who uses money these days? The extremely poor and criminals, right?
I've
Go ahead, Bertram. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, no, your points are great. I love it. It is. I'm sure someone's doing research on this. Maybe they already had. Maybe one of you already knows. But I'm, thinking of how your access to debt changes how much money you feel like you have. I'm very curious for millennials. There's this whole. I don't know how true it is, but the general template is you start off without a lot of assets, without a lot of dependence, and you're very, very liberal. You might even be radical. And then as you gain assets, get more dependent, and have other things, weighing down on you, you become more conservative. And, for my generation, millennials, we just hit this moment where, 50% of them are homeowners, but it's a really unique time for them, this group that, you didn't think were going to get houses because a lot of them got it right before the price and the value of that was going to jack through the roof. And now they have this big storehouse of collateral that they can use for taking out debt. And I have no idea how much money that makes them feel like they have. If they bought this house that a few years back was worth $400,000 and now it's tripled in price.
Well, I could speak to that directly because that's what happened to me. I bought a house in 2019, right? For like $110,000, right? And I had some savings. I put it down, and I'm like, I got a house, right? And I didn't think about it after that. But then, you just watch. When you think, I had one kid, and then I had another kid, and I'm like, maybe we want to get a bigger house, maybe. And then you look at it, you look at yourself, and you're like, damn, my house has doubled in price. It's now like I could probably get, something close to 200,000. So I got 100,000 in equity in my house, basically, right? In 5 years, doing nothing, right? But of course, houses everywhere else are going up in price as well. So it's like you're kind of trapped in the house that you're in, but you don't feel it so much because you're like, oh, I could get an equity lien on my house and like do improvements and things like that. So I think, and I was talking to a friend who's exactly the same age as me, who didn't buy a house, right? And they're like, I'm totally fucked now because the house prices are so expensive. It's like, it's right, the train, like I kind of jumped on the train just as the train was leaving the station. And because I was in a highly sought after part of the country, Springfield, Missouri, it was relatively easy to catch that train. But now it's gone, right? So if you didn't jump on that train at that particular moment in time, you kind of don't have that leverage in your you don't have that storehouse of cash, as Vam puts it. I have friends who who are working academic jobs like me, not just in the I have a friend in London who has a good job, a quote unquote good job at a prestigious university in London. She lives in a rental, which is basically a glorified, single room apartment, right? It's technically a 2-bedroom apartment, but it's basically just, a box with a couple of tiny rooms on in the back, permanently living in debt. She has a salary that gives her access to credit, as Ron said, so she can get a credit card, and then she can live from credit card to credit card. And that's what a lot of people are kind of doing. So they're not poor, they're not starving in the streets, but at the same time, it's not like these people are living like ostentatious lives or desiring to live ostentatious lives. They want access to what are kind of the basic resources and stability of society. I think so much of what we talk about regarding the economic insecurity in this society is not simply about hard cash finances, but it is about the instability of the economy, that you can't predict things. Number one, you can't predict that prices will stay the same, right? We had this long period of relatively low interest when it came to houses, and people got accustomed to that. And we're like, I'll wait another year to buy because it'll still be 3-4%. Now it's 7%. That's going to be difficult.
Right.
And another thing is, because of one advantage, for example, of having like a tenure track academic job is, at least theoretically, you have some long-term stability. You could be somebody who's doing a tech job that's double my salary, but you don't know if you're going to get fired at a moment. And suddenly you go from earning $200,000 a year, and then you're stuck for a year and a half without any meaningful employment. So that scares you into like, maybe I need to be careful. I have to save for the rainy day, or you overextend yourself as well. So it's not, when people talked about, economic insecurity and the Trump voter in 2016, there was a misnomer, I think, that when people say economic insecurity, they're thinking about like somebody who's worried about eating out of the trash cans, right? Well, the people who are eating out of the trash cans, they don't vote, right? The people who are suffering the economic insecurity are people who might have relatively well-paying jobs, but there's no like security that you can plan around for the future. And there's a psychological toll for that to people. So I think there's a great instability. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Birgit.
Oh yeah, no, super short point, but like to the point Vaughn made earlier, and just hearing everything you laid out, Gene, it's like to that lumpenized or that proletarianized, however you want to put it, for the PMCs, like what where they're really going to be priced. Backtracking a little, I wish there was a CPI, but only for the sorts of assets that you run to during inflation. And I don't give a shit about anything else, because it's like, this is where investment money is just going to hold houses that they don't plan to live in because they don't trust any other assets. So they're just going to hold this and wait for the next gravy period. I wish I could just see that stuff. But even if these folks who are, working the tech jobs, but they're not yet eating out of a trash can, they're holding on by a thread. Their ability to keep doing the things that PMCs have to do to compete, to stay in that class, they're getting priced out of that even faster. They have such a, you're fighting to go to a preschool. If the price just like a regular daycare has jacked up, I can be pretty positive the price of the competitive schools that put you into the pipeline to maintain your standing have also been jacked up. So it's really interesting to think about if this continues for another 5 years, where people are just like, the only asset worth having is a house, so those prices aren't going anywhere. And during that whole time, everything you need to maintain your competitiveness as a PMC or somebody adjacent to that is going up. There's got to be some point where you just see a drop off, I assume. Predicting's hard, obviously.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a couple of things that we should talk about as far as like general economics, as far as like what's looming in the background. We've seen an increase worldwide in every country but China, and in China we don't know because Chinese bankruptcy law is very, very strange. I mean, you know, neither here nor there, but in every country but China, you've seen a massive increase in business bankruptcies, not personal bankruptcies because they're hard to get anyway. And we have seen this worldwide. So this narrative that we've been sold on the Biden economy, that's going to blow up pretty soon, I think, because it's not even going to be viable for them. But the one thing I can tell you for sure is that I keep on hearing from even people who I thought were fairly smart and left wing. I'm going to mention Freddie DeBoer because I'm a friend of his and I don't feel like I'm talking too much shit about him. But he was like, the economy is doing well right now. And I asked another economist, Warren Mosler, who's like, well, you know, the way we're keeping the economy afloat is regressive, but really people's feeling of pain is ideologically driven. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, it's absolutely not. People like
Feels pretty material while I'm down here.
My income with my partner has probably doubled in the past 5 years from when I came back to America. All right. But my purchasing power is essentially the same. And you're right, Bertrand, because the stuff you need to be competitive, all those costs are going up even faster than general inflation. I don't even have kids. Right. And to speak to Gene's point, now, this is going to affect stuff like divorce and stuff. I mean, people have been joking about, you know, monogamy in this economy, but I'm going to give you a little bit of an example of that. I bought a house with my ex-wife when I moved back to the United States. I saved up for 5 years abroad to buy that house because I don't have generational wealth. I had to like basically have the elites of Egypt pay for my house and my partner's cancer treatment. I bought a house, I'll be honest, what I put down, I put $15K down on the house that I saved up over 7 years of working abroad, and leveraging the difference in cost of living versus housing in these other countries where I got paid $30,000 a year, but the cost of living there was like $7,000 a year. So I was able to leverage that as a labor aristocrat asshole. And the house that I bought was where, I mean, you guys can figure it out from what I put down, but was about $220,000 when we bought it in 2018. Now I got divorced in 2019. I did not fight my partner for the house, even though I had the right to force her to split it with me. I did not, because I felt like that would be an asshole thing to do. Because we only had at the time probably about $10K in equity in it. But the divorce paperwork and the house settling and all the paperwork around that happened between 2019 and 2022. By the time we finished the paperwork to get me off the mortgage, the house was worth $410K. And that's not in 5 years. That's in 3. So, you know, and this is in a neighborhood that is working class. The average median income for my neighborhood is less than $70K a year. It's mostly immigrant families, but it's created this weird dynamic. People talk about gentrification, but they don't talk about this, where we have a bunch of like Latin people who have become very well off because they bought their house here in the 90s when they were like 50K and they just sold it for like 500K and now can like buy businesses and stuff. But the people who come in after them, they don't have anything. So it even doesn't fit the gentrification patterns that you see in liberal media. It's not like certain groups of brown people aren't benefiting from this. It's all about when you entered the market. And that, I think for a lot of people, that just seems profoundly unfair. But when people come at me, when I talk about like Pascal and I have talked about this, when I say, age is a material condition, and I have like Bosch Carson Carr waving his finger at me about, no, class is not related to generational cohorts. And I'm like, okay, but housing prices are, and housing wealth is. Like if you bought a house for $5,000 in 1979 and you sell that house for $1 million, and I'm thinking this has happened in places like Logan in California, where I've known this has happened. Like you have generational wealth. And the other thing about our wealth numbers, and to talk about this a little bit, the United States has really high super poverty rates, but it's because those poverty rates are figured out on the world scale on net wealth and income. So you have billionaires who are negative net income. All right. So that distorts things too. So you have people who have like, they're a billionaire, but they have $5 billion in debt.
Yeah, I had a friend like that whose dad was always £3 million in debt. Like when you're rich, you actually have no money. You have less than no money. That's a sign of true wealth, is to be able to have minus $10 million. That means you're really rich. I mean, I think Van is nailing it very well here. I mean, there are so many. I mean, just to put how these things intersect with each other, because of the peculiar way that the American education system is structured, housing prices are intimately linked, as Bertram has pointed out, to like maintaining your position in the PMC. Like one of the reasons that the Democrat Party, the Demorats, as I like to call them, were able to seize the governorship of Kansas was because they had that, what's his name, Brownback, who introduced all this kind of libertarian hocus pocus Austrian school economics to the state, ran that experiment for a term, and beggared the state. And one of the things he beggared was the state education system. Well, what was the problem with that? Well, Overland Park, one of the wealthiest sort of suburbs in the Midwest, is in Kansas, and they have a public school system that is extremely good. And so living in that neighborhood is access to a kind of public utility, the education system, that is highly sought after as well. So this connection between like good schools and housing prices like links together the kind of cycle of the rush for houses to, like, why is my house price doubled, right? Simple reason is because I live in like the best district for a public school, right? All the schools around me are like nice public schools. So people who don't want to go because private education, especially in the Midwest, is usually sending your kids to like a Christian madrasa with like underqualified teachers. So people, middle class people want to get their kids into a good public school, and so that drives the house prices. So it's kind of so all these things are actually like, they're not even distinct from one another. The question of education, having access to those to education, having access to childcare, having access to affordable housing, these all come together, and it becomes this daily grind and struggle, and it becomes a question, like Van says, of when did you jump into the market? Like I said, I was lucky. 2019, I got a good deal on a house, right? Somebody coming into the same place 2 years later on the same salary is not going to be in the same position, and it feels you can't plan anything. I think for a lot of people, I think it's like you can't count on anything, You don't have anchoring, you don't have security, you have to move around, and it's pretty glum and depressing.
Also, this idea of like coming in at the right time makes home buying feel like Vegas,
Mm-hmm.
and it almost makes it feel like a game. And that kind of gamification of something with the commodification of housing makes people feel like they can win the game because there's a strategy. So there's always someone going to teach you the strategy. In any market, I can show you how to make money with real estate. How many times have we seen this?
I have, housing is one of those basics that, like, if you grow up poor, that people care about housing. They wish the rent was cheaper. They wish they could afford someplace nicer, someplace adjacent to more public works, to better infrastructure of any kind. It's a big ticket item. So is being able to feed yourself. But I don't know if I have, it's not my specific area of expertise, but over the course of my lifetime, it feels like I've had to, grab food stamps over the last year, well, the EBT card, and the price they're giving me in California mostly covers things. So like rent has just over the course of the last decade for me just been the biggest thing. And it's really hard for me to imagine, and maybe one of you all can enlighten me to something better and less doom. I don't know. But everything we've just described is like those people who have grabbed a house now, that's basically the only good thing they got. It's like the only asset they have, and it's the only jackpot they've won. And I am starting to see that change, in some friends where it's like they would not be looking for anything restructuring or having to do with housing if there's even a whiff of a possibility that it would lower the value of their house, which is now the asset their entire life is built upon.
Yep.
And I'm not really sure how to overcome that. I'm assuming somewhere in all the economic possibilities, there's a way to give people housing without fucking one group of people who are barely getting by. But it's just that the political opposition, they don't have to say much more than your home value is going to go down. They're going to send people running.
I mean, I do have an answer for that, but no one's going to like it.
Hold on, before you get that answer, Pascal, do you want to chime in?
No, I think it's absolutely correct, man. It's the housing is something that drives people up the wall, man. It's like my house value is gonna go down. Oh my god! I mean, it's dirty. It's unexplainable. It's really ridiculous.
Barn?
Make home ownership illegal. So just saying. I know I'm going to sound like the doctrinaire Marxist on these points, but I'm going to be the doctrinaire Marxist for a second. There's not an easy way to reform this in the system that we have. There is not, because you cannot guess you could put in like pricing controls, but good luck on that. There is not much you're gonna do with the kinds of reforms that you see here, because what you can still do, like for example, we're building housing like crazy here. We are, all right. In the Mountain West, like our cities are growing like 20% a year or something crazy because everyone's coming here. Go away, we don't want you anymore. And I say that as a person who's also an outsider. So but in a very real sense, like we're throwing up housing faster than we can see straight. Every like vacant lot is becoming either townhomes or an apartment complex, like everywhere.
I'm seeing it here in Mexico.
Yeah.
You see, the key question is always about this housing is who owns the housing, right? And we're of course seeing all these big investment companies investing into housing. Like people say build housing, but the question is not just yes, you could building houses obviously is a good idea if there's demand for houses. But the real question is not how many houses there are out there. But it's like who owns those houses? If people are owning like I bought my house off and I got it cheap I bought it from some boomers, right? Mm-hmm. Who were getting actually they were probably greatest generationers, right? But they were getting old and they'd bought houses cheap in Springfield and they were renting them out to people, right? Mm-hmm. And so, it's not like it's just big companies. Like a lot of people are landowners and have have a couple of properties that they bought and they rent from. So the question is, of course, like you could probably not solve the issue, but like having severe restrictions on second homes and things like that, or owning multiple residential properties might solve the issue to a certain degree. But the real question is the structure of home ownership, as well as the actual stock of houses out there.
I mean, when we think about this A.L.I.C.E problem, and I haven't heard anybody bring this up yet, a lot of these people, not all of them, but a lot of these people definitely live in major urban cities where things like Airbnb had a stranglehold on the like urban townhouses and apartments, with even regular people renting out multiple apartments to Airbnb, thus making it very, very hard, especially if you live in a city where there's not a lot of restrictions on rent caps.
One of the commenters maybe mostly got at this with the reference that like everybody they know wants to be a landlord, and I have seen, I don't know, so many people have these fantasies around being a landlord and being an Airbnb that I would see as the real power behind this fantasy is that you hate the nature of work. You hate what you are required to do. And being a landlord is your fantasized way out, because you can't imagine any other economic escape where you would, possibly have luxury or free time other than to own a bunch of properties. It's the only passive income you can think of. But I fucking despise it, because the moment you do that, you're putting yourself in a position where for you to have more money and more luxury, you have to make someone pay more for something they need to fucking survive. Hate it. I just hate it. So I support any of these. Legalize, cap it. You can't own more than like some number of homes, but it is. I wish there was a way to direct people away from this. I understand fantasizing about a world where you don't have to go into the sort of offices and the sort of experiences that knowledge workers have. It is just soul deteriorating. But I wish the way of, dreaming of your escape didn't have to do with being a fucking landlord.
I mean, the number of empty houses around me in this place is rather striking. I've only been here for about 3 years. And I've already, my friend Ben Burgess came and he just left. He stayed here for a couple days. And even he was shocked at the number of new constructions. He's only been gone for a year that he's seen. You guys are in all different parts of the country, right? We have the Southwest, the West, and the East, the Southeast with Pascal. Have you guys seen a rise in new home constructions where you guys live? And I'll add to that, how many vacant places do you guys see?
They're all vacant.
Tons.
Really?
Tons. There's tons of vacant houses out here. This is what's so maddening about right now, is that we keep on saying the problem's housing stock, and it might be rental stock. But in my, I used to, like, I've lived in this this neighborhood called Poplar Grove in Salt Lake City, and now you guys kind of know where I live.
Oh no!
I carry a gun. No, I don't anymore. Actually, but
I'm not allowed to carry a gun.
I am. In fact, I can carry a gun on campus.
To carry a gun.
No, Gene isn't. He's not a citizen. So
No, that's not the reason I'm not allowed to carry a gun. In the great state. It's because my wife won't let me.
Oh, okay, yeah. The
He
real
lives in
law is
Missouri,
laid down.
dude. He lives in Missouri. You think they have a law about that? They'd love to.
They
see
have
you.
stricter gun laws than we do in Utah.
I don't know about that. Missouri has pretty lax gun laws.
We don't have a concealed carry permit anymore. I can just concealed carry because I decide to.
Oh, nice.
You keep it inside your jacket pocket and pull it out like a cop.
I'd like to teach in class with 2 6-shooters.
Also, I live in
my
a state, and I'm really not making this up, where I cannot legally break up a fight, but I can legally conceal carry on campus as a teacher.
That should break up all fights. Just
I'm
walk
only allowed
around
to
patting.
open carry knives.
The other night, I was just
Open carry knives, you said.
There were people,
Sally, baby.
there were people doing office pops, like
But
Like the other guys, that's ridiculous.
they're just
But-
doing office pops in my neighborhood, and my wife's like, "What's that?" I was like, "Someone's just doing an office pop."
But to bring it back to the housing a bit, like I've lived in this neighborhood for about 5 years, and I lived in the other half of it for a little while. And so during the height of all this, when the housing inflation was the highest in 2011, 2012, there were 10 empty houses in my neighborhood, and then 10 more that got filled up with California yuppies. No offense, Californians, but because they could come in and buy the house cash off of whatever they sold their house from, and like they have 10% equity or whatever. But the house in California is like $1 million. So at the time, the houses here were 200,000. You can come in and buy them cash. So, but the ones that didn't get bought up by those people were bought up by these investors, and they have not been even rented. They are just sitting there.
Speculative assets. I mean,
Right.
houses are getting built as speculative assets. It's not just that people are going around buying up freaking housing stuff. They're building houses to speculate with, and it's totally bonkers.
Well, it's
I mean,
more and more people
yeah,
can't
that's
even qualify for a home loan. I mean, there's a meme that's a joke. It says I didn't qualify for the $900 mortgage, so I paid $2,400 a month rent.
To Jason's point and yours, Gene, but that speculative spirit that it is gambling that you can hit big. I mean, in my neighbor, I live 2 roommates, but I lucked in, was here in 2019, and I'm in a sleepy part of the valley. It's all suburban and whatnot, but I've seen people get kicked out who I guess used to have a renting situation similar to me. And, a new shiny realtor sign will come up, and I get doors, my door gets knocked on all the time by these people who are selling real estate around here for these homes that are $2, $3, $4, $5, $6, $7 million. And they'll just sit because they are waiting for that, Vegas jackpot moment where it's just suddenly worth it. And they will just sit on them. And California, maybe some other states are doing this, but California has some workarounds for this that I didn't know was a thing. Like I bumped into a guy who was a firefighter, and he was, visiting here, or at least I thought he was visiting here, because he had just flown in. He actually works at the LA firefight. Like he's a LA firefighter, but they changed the rules during the pandemic in part because housing is so expensive here. So he flies back and forth to Montana twice a week. He's allowed to be a local firefighter here, but then have his house in Montana, which I just never heard of anyone basically being able to fly out of the state and then back to work for like a state park service.
Montana made flights really cheap within state.
Well, apparently crossing here is really cheap too. Like Montana to California and back. And he's just
I used to have to make that trip when I worked in North Dakota from California to Montana, and I've flown into every airport in the great state of Montana, and they're all really small and frightening.
But they're subsidized. I saw that Josh Hawley and Elizabeth Warren have done a thing to reduce airplane prices, like to try and increase competition. And I expect that will actually end up having a knock-on effect with people moving around the country to find better deals on housing and then commuting, because now that a lot of jobs are kind of hybrid and you only have to be in the office 3 days a week, it suddenly becomes feasible to do like a couple of days, if the job is worth it. Like you say, Bertrand, like fly out, do your job, go back, do distance stuff. As more PMC jobs come online, the feasibility of someone deciding, you know what, I'm going to sell up my shitty house in New York and move to Springfield, Missouri. And with the money, I'm buying like a 90-bedroom ranch, right?
Yeah. If LA built like a bullet train from the top, California, from like Humboldt all the way down to near Tijuana, like nobody would live in any of these cities. Like everybody would be buying a house on like Murder Mountain or whatever the fuck they call it up in Humboldt, but working in like LA, San Diego, and around there. Like,
well, that was the hope with that supposed bullet train that was going to go from LA to Vegas, was it?
We're not getting no fucking bullet train. That's
No, we're not. But I
No.
mean, that was the hope. I mean, I'm not going to lie. When I had a few dollars many moons ago, I had a house in Bakersfield because I thought that was going to be a boomtown.
Did you smoke crack? Oh no, I believe it's they have the.
Do I sell crack? Is that what you said?
No, isn't that the traditional food of Bakersfield is crack cocaine, or is it more
Methamphetamines.
Methamphetamines. It's meth. It's not crack.
It's more meth.
I mean, you see this in California. There's some places in upstate California, like way past the Bay Area, that are like that feel like they might as well be in Alabama. Which is weird though, because they're still highly inflated because California housing prices are what they are.
Mhm.
So you're in a place that like has like the average income of $40K. They barely have a school. And I'm being serious, like the road.
Talking about some of my friends here, Varn.
Yeah, I'm talking about places north of Humboldt.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm talking about some of my friends here, Varn.
Yeah, and it's just like slide. You're just watching the road slide into the ocean, but yet those places still have like $300K home prices because of their proximity to places like the Bay Area. I mean and to bring this back to the housing prices thing, why we don't have bullet trains here in America? It's also because we don't invest in public infrastructure. But every time any state has tried to do it, even for good, sound economic reasons, so like in Georgia, people freak out about home prices and what the train would do to them. And so they shut it down, which is why it's very hard to get good public transit outside of urban areas, because people start fearing for their home prices. But the ability to maintain things like, I mean, like cars being what they are right now, or any like gas is going to go up. I mean, like all this stuff. And it doesn't help that, like, for example, I know that 2 years ago now feels like forever because we're in the constant political cycle of general degeneracy, and we have no idea what the fuck is going on. But like even in 2021 and 2022, the Democrats, when they wanted to do their big climate change policy, what did they want to do it on? What was the hill that the progressives were unwilling to budge on? It wasn't like subsidies for better green jobs or any of that. It was for a gas tax that would have been regressive as fuck. And then that also makes doing anything about these systemic problems unpopular, because the way the Democrats do it weighs cost on poor people. So it's just, and then
this is what the whole yellow vests shenanigans was all about. It was all trialed out in France because Macron wanted
Gene, your camera fell.
What's his name? Vaughn's exactly right. This is what happened in France with the backlash with the yellow vest, was because like the climate change policies were aggressive and were going to hit poor people on fuel. If you're earning $200,000 a year, it doesn't matter if your petroleum costs, $2 more, $5 more. It's annoying. But, if your margin for living is limited, those costs hit you in the ass.
And it hasn't helped that a lot of the left's answer to this has been in policies that are inflationary. And I don't mean like increasing the money supply. I know that that's actually a pretty open debate in economic circles, whether that actually hits inflation. But there's been arguments from even people who write for Jacobin magazine that said, unless the inflation rate goes above 10%, it doesn't hurt poor people. To which my response is bullshit. It doesn't hurt these A.L.I.C.E people. It doesn't hurt me, right? But it hurts the fuck out of actual poor people.
I've seen those articles. It's so absolutely absurd. Or articles that say there's been no real crime increase since COVID. I was like, what are you talking about? Just because you've seen a slight decrease in murder rates in recent months, you're going to tell me there's been no crime increase at all since COVID?
well, I'm noticing the same thing that we've seen before. I've seen before on stuff like murder statistics in the United States on and liberals and mass shootings. And I might get in trouble for this one, but you know, before the 2010s, when was the biggest decade for mass shootings? The 80s. Not a time period you think associated with it. So but if you look at the stats that everyone talks about the mass shooting increase, they start with Columbine, right? They start with Columbine. And so recently, when you've seen all these crime statistics stuff, yes, compared to like the 70s, the 80s, and early 90s, crime's still slightly down. But compared to the aughts and the aught teens, crime is significantly up, even though it's gone down since, you know, the high point in 2021, 2022. But of course, journalists like their stats to be clean, and they're highly selective on it. And I want people to know this: all your journalists of whatever their ideological party, I've caught them all lying with stats, every fucking one of them, including people on our side. Like the whole, I remember watching DSA adjacent people arguing that the Democrats were the party of the working class, ignoring that the Democrat, because people who make over 100K are more likely to vote Republican, until you actually look at the fine grain of the stats and you see, but between 250K and $1 million, you're more likely to vote Democrat. And then in the above $1 million, flip a coin. So like, all these things about like who's associated with what class, like what party is doing this, all this is usually statistics that are technically true, but they're cooked in a way that you can't get a good grasp of what is going on. And that's maddening to me when you try to talk to people about this stuff. You know, I guess one of the things that we can talk about with COVID, though, is we're kind of all the Bay Area now. Like, in the sense that, no, actually, I don't wish.
I lay down at night, I'm fucking out from the Bay.
You know, you think just because you got one nice coffee shop in town, all of a sudden you're the Bay Area.
No.
That's all the Bay Area is.
One nice coffee shop.
Well, the Bay Area is one of the only places where housing costs have actually gone down.
Yeah, take that.
But it's still interesting to look at all this right now when you look at like what's happening to the rest of the country, because Boise is experiencing housing cost increases that we associated with the Bay Area and Southern California and the aughts. Like Salt Lake City has seen, like, the average home price in the 7 years I've gone here has increased from $250,000 to almost $600,000, and that includes rural Utah. And to talk about this whole like and if I don't know if any of you, I know Jason has, but I don't know if any of the rest of you have ever been to rural Utah. There's nothing to fuck there. It's dirt. So it's dirt and really pretty rocks. That's what I mean, it's really pretty, but
hey, the Red Rocks, one of the most beautiful drives in the great United States of America is those Red Rocks in Utah. Oh, the drive from Vegas to Salt Lake, gorgeous.
Yeah, and so it's it is a gorgeous area, but like to speak to this, I have a teacher who has a family that I work with, and she had to buy. Now, luckily, my program is partially online, so you don't go in every day on like traditional classrooms. Which, by the way, you're going to see more of, because we literally can't get enough teachers to keep the traditional classrooms staffed. We just don't have the teaching core. But nonetheless, so we see these kind of hybrid programs come up. Well, she had to buy a house 2 hours away in bumfuck nowhere in a place called Helper, which I don't know if anyone's ever been, but it's like a gas station and rocks.
Is it where you find sister wives?
Yes, actually, it's one of the places where you can find people who look Amish but are polygamous.
They're not.
Absolutely. And so
we all know that's why Vaughn's in Utah. He's there for the sister wives.
I don't want the ones. Anyway, so my point is, so you have a teacher now in Salt Lake who had to move 2.5 hours out of the city. We are having to close schools in Salt Lake City. Do you know why? It is too expensive for families to live here. They now live in the greater area. It is not because there's no kids. Unlike the rest of the United States, Mormons have shit ton of children. They have less than they used to, but like the average family height here is something like 6, as opposed to what 2.5 or whatever it is. So we have these very large families, and yet despite the fact that this population and Utah's population of people moving in is growing at 20% per year, but it's so expensive for families to live in the cities, we're having to shut down schools. Like that's where we're at here. Like, so I don't really see how this plays out well.
Yeah, it's not going to play out well at all. Let me share something on. Let me share my screen with you guys all for a second, just to give you how crazy this is. Okay, and check this out. This. Oops.
Oh, sorry, that was me.
Ah!
I effed up. Sorry. Damn it.
Again.
There we go. This is house price increases in Springfield, right? This line you see at the end before the big thing, that's 2020. That is not a sustainable rise in housing prices for a bumblefuck city in the Midwest. And I guarantee if I go around places in other parts of the country, that graph is going to look even worse than this. But this, I mean, you can see here you have pretty stable prices throughout the 2010s. This decade, it's a huge increase. It's a bigger increase in 4 years than over the entire preceding decade, right?
And it really sets us up for this great moment where a bunch of cash-strapped people over-leverage themselves using that massive increase in home estimate, and then the values drop. And
Yeah, let's talk about fictitious capital, because we're going to see a lot of that right now. And we're seeing that in business too. So fictitious capital, for those of you who don't understand what that means, I've been told by some of my MNT friends that it doesn't exist. And I know people know that I pick on MMTers. I actually agree with them on like 90% of everything. So, but I will say this. If your valuation and your levers off the valuation of something that you cannot sell for that price, but your assets are marked at the price valued, when you go to sell it and you sell it for, I don't know, 100K less than what it was valued for, the value that was priorly there was fictitious. It was never real. It came from a misvaluation of your property, right? There is a shit ton of that right now. That because if people tried to liquidate everything that's potentially on the market right now, it would collapse. Like, and I even think this with home prices. So we're talking about all these extra homes that people are sitting on for investments. But if people actually, okay, we got to all unload them right now, you could actually see something like a 2007 again, because it would drop home prices precipitously to do that, because it would be very clear that we have a lot more stock than people realize. The other thing I would say about this is really interesting right now is we're kind of sitting on a bunch of kind of big time bombs, in that a lot of this stuff is going to, you have to valorize it eventually. But there's so much money in the system that we don't account for. So for example, when you decrease the money supply by raising interest rates instead of taxing, because Keynesians got cowardly and they don't tax the rich anymore, which is actually what you would normally do. So instead of what you do is you fuck around with the interest rates, right? Well, the thing is with that is those interest rates also pay out somewhere. They don't pay out. It's not like 1-to-1. It actually does decrease the cash flow, and the way MMTers figure out the cash flow and the way the Fed figures out the cash flow is different. Before people throw MMT stuff at me, I'm aware of the difference. Literally, MMTers count all debt as cash flow. But the thing that I want people to realize is that even though this cash flow is going the stock of cash in the economy has actually gone down because of these interest rates. They also pay out to bonds eventually, which means you're going to eventually have all this money coming back into the economy somewhere. But it's going to go to the people who hold tons of bonds. And who can hold tons of massive amounts of bonds? Banks and investment firms and venture capitalists and all this. And we've already seen this bond instability actually lead to shenanigans. For those of you who know about all those banks that went up 2 years ago that led to Sam Bankman-Fried, a lot of that's tied into the fact that some of these crypto things were actually offset by bond prices. So the change in bond prices and what they had to pay out on bonds actually destabilized the entire bank. So none of these things actually just simply move money out of the economy like taxation does. What this does is it actually means that a lot of this money is going to show back up later, and in whose hands? The already ultra wealthy. So this is something to really consider when you hear about all these things about like what these people are trying to do. If you wanted to fight inflation directly and you thought the problem of inflation was the amount of the money supply, how should you fix it? Direct taxation. What are you going to never see in the United States because it's politically unpopular? Direct taxation, except the poor people. This is another thing we need to talk about right now. And then I'm going to go off my high horse and rant. But there's a bunch of bombs in the Trump tax cuts that exploded on the bottom end, not the top. So the first time in American history since we've had progressive taxation at all, the raw nominal tax rate, not real tax rates, not like after all your write-offs and all the other shit you can do to hide money, but the nominal tax rate for the wealthy is lower than people making under 200K a year, which means all this is going to get worse, right? Because poor people are also paying more taxes and rich people are not.
I mean, and I think when we talk about when we say interest rates raises, it's a euphemism for increasing unemployment.
Right. Yes.
That's what it means. That's what it means practically.
And they can't increase unemployment because we don't have enough people in the market to actually run the economy at the unemployment increase that they would want. So, like,
for the longest time, the whole purpose of these interest rates was to discipline labor.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I mean, folks who know much more about tax policy and like the implications of it, please weigh in. I'm just curious. For years I've been hearing about how the IRS was emaciated, that, under the Trump presidency had been basically whittled down to whatever threshold you would need to really pursue corporations and high net worth individuals. They made sure they kept it below that level. Then a year ago, they were promised $80 billion over 10 years. And then now, they're making the rounds and talking about early in the tax season, just focusing on individuals who earned over $400,000 a year. They had already collected $200 million and they hadn't even made it through their whole list. And I'm wondering if people have any thoughts on like, why are they doing
I
that
know
suddenly?
people who have got jobs for the IRS. I would say that, so they definitely are hiring. I know some academics who made the switch to the dark side, to the tax collectors. But I don't know anything much about tax policy at all, so I can't speak cogently about it. But I mean, it's kind of well known that, I mean, the way that you do your taxes here in America is also weird, very weird in a kind of way. It's like you have to buy this. If you want to do your taxes, you have to go to like a tax office, some private company to do your taxes, or you have to buy a piece of software. You can't like just do your taxes, if you get what I mean. It's a very Byzantine process. It's not a very simple process to navigate. And I'm gonna just assume rich people, because of the Byzantine nature of the tax process, have been able to like avoid paying, not necessarily do anything illegal, but do things that allow them to avoid paying tax. Where if you're just like paying for TurboTax because you have to do your taxes, you can't really game the system, right? So and yeah, like as you say, Bertram, for years people complained that the IRS was, liberals complained that the IRS was underfunded. Now that they seem to be staffing up. I can see. I know people who have gone into that staffing up procedure, but I wonder how effective this will be in the long term. I mean, what's even the point if they aren't going to tax them that much anyway?
Pascal, do you have any closing remarks?
No,
I want to know something, Pascal. I want you to tell me something.
Yes.
Can you tell me if the allegations about P. Diddy are true?
Oh man, we did whole shows on P. Diddy. I cannot verifiably tell you those allegations are true or untrue.
Have you ever been invited to a freak off?
Even if I knew they were true, I would not. That would be possibly libelous, and I would not state so. But if you ask me, do I think they are true?
Mm-hmm.
I will say I think that there might be some truth to it. I mean, let's play this, man. Sean Combs has been known to be doing very strange things for many years. There are many people who are not surprised by many of the allegations at all, quite honestly. The question
do you know anyone who went to a freak off, though?
Do I know anyone personally? Did I ever tell you that the person who Sean Combs named as president at Bad Boy Records went to high school with me?
So you do know someone who went to a freak off.
Yes.
Pascal was there when Shine took the rap for that shooting.
No, so,
I would. I'm Bertram. I'm glad you would be not safe in that freak off. You're a pretty young man, and I don't know what. I mean, Diddy. From what
Isn't Diddy conversations like really champagne room conversations though?
It's free champagne.
We're free champagning tonight.
Free champagne. We are
Well,
over. This is
That's
45
probably
minutes
what
of
Diddy
free
would have
champagne
offered
here at
you going
TIR.
over there. It's free champagne.
From what I can tell, Diddy. I mean, Pascal wouldn't be safe in one of those Diddy passes.
Oh man, all that hot chocolate. He would just lose his mind.
Well, I'm going to say something serious, and we can get onto unserious, which maybe is talking about how Kendrick Lamar beat up Drake, but has bad politics.
Yeah, his politics are trash. I don't care about that, but can we admit that BB?
But before we get to that, I do want to comment on the people we're talking about on the underfunding of the IRS. It is a nightmare. I owe taxes this year, and I'm trying to pay them. And actually, the IRS is so underfunded they can't generate the bill to give me to pay the taxes formally in a payment plan and get it done with. But on the other hand, for people to talk about auditing and what the Democrats really care about, you know what they care about? They care about all that money that you were supposedly hiding as a gig worker are like taxing you on moving your rent around because you forgot the code, the movement of money right on PayPal, so it showed up as a payment as opposed to just an income transfer, and thus you get taxed at it as income. Yes, that is what the Democrats cared about. Did they fix any of the Trump tax cut problems in the 2 years in office? Absolutely not. What did they do? They made gig work money more transparent so they could tax you on your
bloody PayPal. They ruined my PayPal. They ruined my eBay business because it became such a freaking hassle. I was selling Warhammer miniatures like a G. I was going in on there. Now it's like I can't be bothered filling them forms.
Yeah, poor Gene as a petty bourgeois, as the lumpen petty bourgeois,
Warhammer dealer,
as a Warhammer dealer, which might as well be crack. I mean, like we know what Games Workshop does.
It's like you want some. I got some of them Space Marines for you.
I had a question, Jason, just in terms of I feel like you may have been further along in reading the A.L.I.C.E. material, or at least you were looking for it.
Yeah.
Part of my thought is that if A.L.I.C.E. does break through and it circulates through the normal liberal channels, people get to read it, listen to it, hear it, and walk away with like, that's right. I am, I'm the one going through it. I'm suffering. I knew it. This acknowledges it. And I wonder if you got to see any of the policies that they recommended, and is there anything there that really augments any of the stuff that we've been talking about? Or is
No. The little bit I saw was UBI.
Really? Yeah, a UBI component.
But I need to get in there a little bit more. I actually right before we started, I found
that's
some
what
more
we need
paperwork.
people to be, is totally dependent on their income from what the fuck Congress is doing in any given day. That's a great idea. I mean, I don't know. I know that there's a bunch of people who like believe UBI, but let me, like, the perfect world in which UBI works is a world in which you aren't ruled by people controlling the money, but you are ruled by people controlling the money. So if they give you money, it's never going to be enough to live on, and they're probably going to raise prices.
And this is my theory, Vaughn. This is my ultimate theory. You know how America does its kind of social programs through private companies? You know, they don't have like the state capacity like in Europe. You know, it's just beyond them for some reason. They won't even give you money. You'll get fucking Amazon bucks.
Oh, you're fucking right. You're right.
They'll give you Amazon bucks. You'll have a choice. Do you want Amazon bucks
or Walmart bucks?
Walmart bucks, or we can put money in your Steam wallet.
You see, the thing about the Amazon bucks is like they already own Whole Foods. So if I'm going to live under the Amazon dictatorship, I might as well get my organic rusted. So I'm going to take the Amazon bucks. I'll take those.
Well, look at that. That's a smart man right there.
Take the Amazon bucks.
This is
Amazon
why we
bucks.
don't pay Beltram the big bucks, because we should pay him the big bucks.
But
go ahead, Gene.
100 Amazon bucks. Jeez.
Or a box of fish sticks. It'll be like, oh, you need help feeding your kid? Here's a box of fish sticks.
You know what, though? The senators probably wouldn't get on Amazon bucks because there's so much stuff from China on Amazon that they might block it because of security reasons. So, like, you know.
Target dollars.
Patriotic Amazon. They'll make patriotic. There'll be Walmart bucks. There'll be a war over in Congress.
Yeah, they're like a cool American jungle. We can just rename the brand after
Miami.
Is anyone else disturbed by the fact that J.D. Vance is a U.S. senator?
Oh, God.
He's going to be vice president.
I feel like we live in the dumbest timeline.
He can be president of the United States.
Oh, yeah, he totally could be president of the United States.
More likely than AOC.
We all really need to be nice. We all really need to be nice.
He hates the poors, too.
Yeah,
yeah, man. He's dangerous. He's a dangerous guy. He's more dangerous than Trump.
So this idea of Alice is pretty liberal, I would say. Democratic, liberal, NGO world stuff. Can you imagine a J.D. Vance administration hearing this term? Oof.
I actually backed out of learning more about J.D. Vance because, you know, as you've seen from my moniker, half my family is just like white trash, deaths of despair and shit. When I first read Hillbilly Elegy, I was like, okay. I enjoy the stories that he's telling. I clearly don't agree with this person politically. But then after that book, apparently everyone who got the sense like, nah, this dude is going to go off the fucking rails and he clearly hates poor people ended up being right. And just because I mildly liked the book, I was just like, I don't even want to know what the fuck he's saying. I don't even want to know what the fuck he's saying.
Yeah, he's a special case. You want to talk about someone who hides their background? Like, there's a whole part of how he became meritocratically well off that he doesn't mention, that because he was a non-grunt in the military, he wasn't infantry. He had access to like lower level Ohio senators who helped him get into the schools that he got into later. And he just doesn't mention that at all. But also, you know, he's guilty of hick face because he's not actually, his relationship to
hick face.
Yes, hick face.
They're like blackface, but for hicks.
Yes.
Wait a minute, Varn. Last time you were here, you created a brand new racial slur.
I would love to hear about Higface because there isn't a cool name for like my type of white. Like my type of white is like shameless white. Like it's of no benefit. So, we know nothing about the outdoors. We don't navigate the system because we're too chaotic for fucking paperwork. It's kind of a shit show. So I would love to hear about Higface.
Hickface is where you claim like hillbilly origins, and you might have it like 3 generations back, but you grew up in Ohio. So I mean, because he's also the hatred of the poor thing shows up, and like he's blaming the culture of the Scotch Irish hillbillies, like even though he's from that. That's part of the whole. There's this weird, if you actually like pay attention to it, like racial narrative about which white people are good, and the Scotch Irish are really like they're the black white people. So that's implied and all that stuff. For those of you who don't know, like the bell curve, what's his face? And I normally know
Charles Murray.
Charles Murray, yeah. Charles Murray also attributes like all the dumb whites to the Scotch Irish, which, you know, as a Scotch Jewish Bulgarian, fuck that guy. But
Also, Scottish Enlightenment. I don't know if Scotch is a moniker or if like they're actually of Scottish heritage, but I think the Scots have done all fucking right.
yeah, you know, well they have, but they're also like they're the poorer part of Britain, so you got to blame them. You got to blame it. You got to come up with a new racial theory to separate the good whites from the bad whites. So there you go. And you know, Bertram, it sounds like you're descended from the bad whites.
Oh yeah, the just trash. And like my mom is Jewish and Irish, and like it was funny because everything I ever saw about Jews was like they had a ton of money, and I was like, I don't know what happened.
Where's my Soros check?
I want my Jew gold. I never got it.
Derek, I need to know: is Hee Haw Hickstrel comedy?
Yes, it is Hickstrel.
Hickstrel comedy.
Hickstrel.
What about, is that Larry the Cable Guy? Is he
Larry the Cable Guy? Oh man, is that peak Hickstrel?
Yeah, all those redneck comedy tour people, all Hickstrel, all of them, everyone.
Hickstrel, like minstrel.
Yeah,
I'm assuming this is minstrel. Okay, yeah.
He has his Larry the Cable Guy has his own brand of biscuits and gravy mix.
That sounds disgusting.
I know.
If that sounds so disgusting. There's a bunch of Yankees on the screen right now, except for Derek Varn, so they're not allowed to comment on this conversation for a second.
Wait, I'm not a Yankee.
I'm sorry.
We also have a British curd. He doesn't really care.
You're British curd.
A new kind of cheese.
Derek Varn. Would I'm
unlike all the other all the other poor folks who have like this rich, ethnic quality to like their food and shit, whereas both black and white, I'm like, our cuisine is convenience store. It's like ordering Domino's and watching fucking the football game. Like there's no legacy here.
That's because you live in the most advanced capitalist country in the world.
And don't you forget it.
Yeah.
But Derek Varn, would any redneck worth their salt eat biscuits and gravy from a mixed packet?
No, fuck that. No.
Oh my God, you would get thrown off.
Also, like,
boat.
Of the things that, like, why do you need a mixed packet for biscuit and gravy? It's literally animal fat and flour. That's it. Like,
a lot of work.
And some black. Okay, I guess browning.
Is that the cooking video I have to do for the TIR OnlyFans?
Yeah, you should do a.
Do they tell you what abcab means on TIR?
Just call it a roux, and everyone will think it was classy.
Barn. We were making a joke on the Red Zone a few weeks ago about how I have to do an OnlyFans for TIR cooking, and somebody yelled out that abcab, all balls and cock. And that's gonna.
What are you making? Rocky Mountain oysters? Is that what you're doing now?
I can make biscuits and gravy for the first one.
Fatback biscuits and gravy.
Pascal wants to make sure I get all the singes.
Yeah, fatback because oh man, that'll be extra salty gravy, but you gotta do it.
I fucking eat it.
You'd need to before the Diddy's freak off party, definitely. Need that energy.
Diddy is one of those dudes where like
he'd make you fuck Tiffany Haddish in front of him, and then Lizzo.
Wow, what a mix!
That's a hell of a 1-2 combination. There,
So one,
Gene.
and then you're in the back, and then you're in the back. It's what's his name? You're in the escape room with Diddy. He locks you in the escape room.
You're making this sound like Saw, but as a sex crime.
You want to play a game? But
I'm just saying, Bert's so handsome. I mean, Diddy just wouldn't be able to help himself.
Luckily, I'm suspicious that Diddy can't fight, and I think I just slap him hard as fuck in the face.
But
What if
hire
he gets an
people to
erection
fight?
though? What if you do that and he got a fucking erection? What do you do?
I mean, I was mentally preparing as a teenager for going to prison, and you hear some crazy shit. So, I mean, he can have his erection as long as I get the fuck out of there. We're cool.
Breaking
that
news.
video?
Breaking news.
What the fuck? Urkel got married to a white lady called Dr.
Yes. I think she works in IT. And I think it's a ching ching situation.
She's Asian?
No, she's
Not like money.
She's
No money, like he's cashing a check.
and Dr. Umar is just basically jealous because you can't be that hotep.
Dr. Umar, I've never seen a guy have so much hatred for interracial relationships in my life as Dr. Umar. He's like, no, my brother.
But you know he's addicted to the pose.
You know, the moment he sees one of them butt clapping white girl videos, I'm sure his Instagram reels is just white women clapping
200-pound
their
white
ass.
blonde women.
You saying when Dr. Umar goes on his Instagram, he's going to all the big body Beckys.
Oh my God.
And looking
If
for
it's
them,
not snowing, he ain't showing.
and he's looking for them. Clap, clap, clap it up. Clap, clap, clap it up.
Dude,
They gotta put
Pascal,
the hoe in hotep for him.
Pascal,
One and a
remember
half
your
of
face?
us cannot comment on this.
I don't care. I refuse.
Dr. Umar
What's his doctor name?
knows he loves white women.
What's his
Dr. Umar said he did know my brother.
He enjoys the forbidden fruit, that pale stretch,
Dr. Umar is a
catchy goose-colored skin.
Why does it have to be pale though? Jeez, fucking Christ.
You know,
The daughter of Yakub over here.
he just goes wild for the cellulite. He's like, yeah, baby.
Oh, I can see. Oh, dude, you know Dr. Umar. If like you get a couple drinks in him, he's like, oh, that's how I like them. When their ass cheeks be all dimply.
He just puts his face in it. You know,
Does Dr.
No.
Umar drink?
Oh, you know he gets fucked up. Only brown liquor.
Wait.
that and malt liquor.
Oh, I could totally see Umar drinking malt liquor.
Is he
I mean,
like a
I
nigger
drink- I drink
hotep,
malt
or is he
liquor.
like
I
a
drink malt
like
liquor.
high mighty Huxtable like hotep? Like
A real
Well, yeah, on the Hotep class scale, where are we at? Like,
Yeah. Is he the type of dude who's drinking malt liquor? Or is he the type of dude telling me what we used to distill in Africa when we were kings?
I think when we were
that depends on how tired he is.
oh, okay.
Technically, what does he do? He's like child. He's got some role in
Is early childhood development or something?
early childhood development. He has some vocation, but he's hotepped it all so much. He believes that we got to keep the black boys against the gay agenda, away from the gay agenda, and all kinds. He's just all kinds of
I bet
stuff.
he's been to a Diddy freak off. Oh no, my brother. But what?
So, are you accusing Diddy of being Black Epstein now? Is that what we're?
Oh,
at?
he's
He's
totally
Black
Black Epstein.
totally Black
He's
Epstein.
totally Black Epstein. Hey, I
Black-
found
Black
a
Steve-
video. I found a video, Gene.
He is allegedly totally Black Epstein. Let's
Allegedly.
legally cover yourself. You're already demonetized. You would like to not be sued.
Wait,
Uh,
wait. I got to show you guys this video that is the wrongest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Oh fuck!
Since we're already in demonetized land,
Let's
I
go
have
for it.
to
Let's
show
see
you this guy's
video.
vi-
Let's see this video.
Let's look at this video. This is Dr. Umar is the dude in this video. Check this out. Right? Older lady, right?
Sucking cream. All
Just
right.
sucking cream. Watch
Hey,
this veteran move.
but just before we watch this, this is another way that you might be able to get a house in the future.
Only fan homeownership plan.
Whose grandmother is hurting for cash like this? This must be an Alice. That's classic Alice behavior.
They said the majority of Alice's are over 65.
Well, and also think about this: the
Elderly fans.
the post-sexual revolution ladies are now in their 60s and 70s now. So
She started under the balls. Just remember when she licked that cream, that's the under the balls she started at.
She
Just to let
remembers
you
when she
know.
used to get hit otherwise.
Boom, boom, boomer. All right.
That's Umar's dream right there.
dream team.
You know what I was reading recently is that the amount of STIs in old folks' homes is actually kind of astronomical right
Yeah,
now.
I mean
Why,
that's
right
been the thing for a
You
while.
see right there.
That's when people got mad about that Madonna video, and I was like, man, that's like just this is
She's been jerking
that's what
off on
grandma's
stage
doing.
since 1984, dude.
She's been doing that shit since '84, and that's what your grandma's doing in that retirement home in the Villages in Florida.
I would be real disappointed. They're like, we got to go visit Nana. Why? Is she sick? Yeah.
She's got
Herpes.
chlamydia.
Herpes.
Bad herpes flare up. Got Nana.
Man,
Those motherfuckers, they're raw as well all the way. It's like, look, man, 50, all those years I had to be careful. Now, nope, we're going to the danger zone. If I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die happy.
With
Well,
that
I mean,
Did you read what Cher said recently? They asked her, why do you date younger men? And she's just like, because all the men my age are dead.
I
was like,
saw
shit.
that. Because her dude is like 24, right?
Hey,
But you know what? Cher, lady in the video.
that dude is black, and he's gonna get a house.
That is another way to get a house. Yes, correct.
Look at Bert. He's over here like this. He's like,
But you gotta
oh,
psych yourself up. We'll get you some blue chew there, and we're gonna send you to the Villages. Find you.
You can find an old share type lady who wants to buy me a house for a good time, or even a few good times, a couple times a quarter. You let me know, Gene.
I will. Do.
I'm not
You gotta have you popping blue chews like bubble gum, brother.
Listen, I need equity. That.
Bert would be wearing that old ass out.
Yeah, I hope she's got one of them space age hips because we're fucking doing this. Hope she's ready.
I'm gonna fuck a cyborg.
I'm aiming for her to have to press that necklace. Like, that's my goal. Because that's how I know I get that addition. Like, I'm looking for an affinity pool. Like, I'm trying to,
I think we need to put Bert in a package and just send him to Cher's house.
Because Bert, y'all don't know this, man. Bert is ripped.
Yeah, I do know this. I bet Bert.
Motherfucker is
We've been in
ripped,
LA.
dude. Can you imagine Bert coming in there, fucking Django and that shit, just kick the door open and be like, I'm your new
Okay,
light
see,
skin
now
king."
this got racial. No, I'm kidding. Honestly, if that's what she's down for, the slave play, she wants to say some Django names. The whole time, I'm just like, this is for that generational wealth, you know. Tell the grandkids like this is how I built this.
This is how this is the this is the if immigrants have to do it, now Americans have to do
I was
it.
about to say, if immigrants and women have to do it, maybe it's time that men have to do it too. I don't know.
Exactly.
Honestly, politically speaking, it can only help my brand if I can also say I was a sex worker. Like at that point, I become politically invulnerable. Like,
oh yeah, that's true. That's
well,
true.
if Vice was still around, you would actually be, you'd have your own like weekly column at that point. Like,
the place with this on, I missed it.
Like there was a point, I think, in the late 2010s where every other Vice article was how to pleasure a larger lady. And I'm not even joking about this. There was at least 5 or 6 articles. I mean, I could see Bert like how I pleasure my 78-year-old girlfriend with safety in mind, like,
oh yeah.
Got the Zimmer frame. Have you tried Zimmer frame style?
That's a walker, Bert. That's a fucking walker.
No,
you gotta walk. It's like you have to protect them.
This could be a multi-part. It could be about how to do it in one of those handicap baths where you got the real sturdy handles, and it's like I put her in no-slip rubber shoes.
How to deal with your lover when she has incontinence.
It is funny how much an elderly home sounds like a kink dungeon the way you guys are describing it right now, but and also
the elderly people feel the same way, Barn.
Look, I don't see
elderly people. Yeah, I mean that's what's going on. Yeah.
All right.
Is there a difference between a kink dungeon and an old people's home?
No, not really.
I mean, if I interview an old person, tour them around, and be like, "Do you see a difference?"
They both involve poles and speculums, so I guess you're probably right.
Sometimes you shit yourself.
Can we roast Vaughn for joining Class Unity yet?
I'm already out of Class Unity. But yes, you're free to roast me because Daniel talked me into joining Clash Unity for a couple.
Who talked you into it? Who peer pressure? Tut.
How did he get you?
He's being cancelled by Acid Horizons because he talked to the bad man, and the bad man is Haz, and I find Haz quite.
You mean the short devil?
The short devil. He's like seems like he's relatively. He's not a silly, but he's not completely stupid. He's just very silly at times, and he's a really good performer. I think he's quite funny, but yeah, they were very upset that he did a bad talk to him. You can see Acid Horizons commits the cardinal sin of podcasting, which is like more than being pretentious. They're so boring, right? They're just such boring people.
I'm sure they'll have a lot of things to say about my piece.
Come on, Vaughn. Why don't you do a debate with Haz? I want to see who can shout louder. Like, I'm all about the Coliseum now. I just want war crimes.
So you want me to do a debate with Haz and it's like in person and we have daggers and like I secretly poison mine because that's what I would do.
I think you would just slap him. I think when Ryan Grimm didn't put hands on that Destiny person,
Ryan Grimm should have put hands on. I mean, I would respect Ryan more if he'd have just busted Destiny's face.
Ryan, I know you're watching right now. Ryan, look, I'm coming to DC. Okay, we'll sit down and talk, and I'll get you. I'll talk to you like Mickey did Rocky. You're gonna crap. You're gonna eat lightning and crap Thunder Rock. Next time you slap the shit out of that motherfucker for saying that insane shit about cookies.
I'm sure at this point, like, there would be too much to cover, but I'm just gonna say, like, I don't know. 4 months ago, I didn't know who Destiny was, and I don't keep track with every like podcaster and online personality. And then it felt like I was being shown him constantly, and then he was doing all of like the late night show circuits
and also that he's like now the main expert on expressing the Israeli side of the Israeli-Palestinian.
Well,
so he's when you.
Yeah, but when you have to like find some streamer dipshit to appeal to the youths, and you need the only one who's willing to take really objectionably bad takes on Israel, he's who you're gonna have to call because no one else is willing to do that. Not even Vosh. So usually Vosh is who I rely on for my bad takes, but Also, why the fuck do I know who these streamers are? I do like. I know that I'm old now, and that's okay. But I really do resent the fact that people who like get their politics from reading Wikipedia are being summoned in as specialist on cable news shows. Now I realize that what that actually proves is that's always been the case, and we just all didn't have Wikipedia before. But like, it really makes me mad. Like it actively makes me mad. I was like, so not only did I wish Ryan Graham laid hands on him, I wish old ass Finkelstein laid hands on him. I put my money on Finkelstein just to, like,
I think if
grab
Norm
a cane
Finkelstein
and,
was
like,
10
beat
years,
him and-
I believe in my soul, if Norm was 10 years younger, he would have hit that kid. He would have hit that kid.
I've only seen Norm in a few debates, but my feeling is that, similar to me, I feel like Norm starts with the eye gouge. Like that is his opening move.
Like Norm comes off to
Yes.
me as like he's smart, but he also seems to be literally the most autistic guy that you could have, because he seems like physically to be like, you know, he just gets really frustrated with these people. There's something I don't want to say off about him, right? But he's just, let's say, neurodivergent. He just seems a bit neurodivergent on these things, which I think in that particular context works quite well for him, right?
You know, well, Destiny is making me pro struggle session. Like that's where I'm at now. Like I'm like, you know what? Maybe the Maoists didn't have a bad idea. Let's just mock someone until they jump off a bridge. Like it's basically where we're at. And also, young people, streamers are not your friends. Just because someone won't shut the fuck up for 8 hours a day because they don't have a real job doesn't mean you should give them money. Also, give us
Jason-
Orange, shut up.
Shut up! Shut up!
Fuck is wrong with you?
You want Jason to starve to death in Mexico?
I did a 5-hour stream the other day, Varn, for 24 people. Okay, 24 people watched for 5 hours.
Jason's gonna be out there on the streets, shaved face, get that Mexican BBL.
Yeah, I'm gonna be out there next to Bert, next to the old ladies.
You know, it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter when you enter this thing, though, because I don't think you can be a Destiny again, unfortunately.
Well, there goes my dream.
No, the market is full of destinies.
I recently found out that we have a
We have a super chat from Prairie
It's
Fire
funny.
Kowalski. Shout out to Kowalski. I recently found out I have some of those RFK brainworms. I don't think they got anything important before I drank the hydrocaloxy. I can't even say that word.
Queen.
Yeah.
Get them. We're all rooting for Drake, right?
Look, Drake is he's a child actor. That's what he is. I'm now firmly convinced that all rappers and gangster rap is all just black theater kids.
So RFK,
I would disagree, but the real
You
ones die at 21.
I was about to say,
Yeah.
it is like there's real ones. They just don't live very long.
Lately, yeah. That's a new phenomenon too. That's not
Because the generation was soft, Jason. No, I'm kidding. You didn't know how to go out at 20 like King Von or Pop Smoke.
I mean, if you want to get
Diddy's a theater kid gone wild.
if you're gonna real about it, you can go all like 90s black metal and like hang your enemies or whatever the fuck they were doing.
Yeah.
Like,
Kill your bandmates,
You know,
burn their house
something-
down.
today,
Tupac, who I
something
love,
terrible
is
happened
actually
to
a
me.
theater kid.
My wife told me to turn off my Limp Bizkit album.
Why?
She said, "Turn that off."
Did you just
And turn your hat around. Who the fuck do you think you are?
No, she said there was no more Limp Bizkit for me.
Did you say it was just one of those days?
I couldn't. It's one of those days, exactly.
Gene, you just gotta have faith.
Yeah, exactly.
Jesus Christ.
But you know what? I'm gonna keep rolling.
Oh shit. If your wife is telling you to turn off the Limp Bizkit, if someone told me that, I would usually look at the woman and be like, just leave them. It's not going to get any better.
Yeah, definitely take relationship advice from Jason. Our consummate official on healthy relationships.
Hey, I met a new woman. Maybe I won't fuck this up.
Are you going to listen to Limp Bizkit around her?
Ooh, no.
Okay.
I'm not. I'm gonna do something that I never do. I'm not gonna listen to the music I like around her.
Oh,
What are you going to listen to?
Just whatever she wants to hear.
Steely Dan.
I'm a huge Steely Dan fan, so I
Oh,
can do that. I can do that
Right.
with joy.
I mean, I'm glad.
Oh, we're really through the
Are you gonna
years.
like live up to stereotypes and listen to that Black Yacht Walk or whatever? Like,
Oh yeah, dude. A lot of Black Yacht Rock.
DeBarge.
Oh, definitely. A lot of
Go to
barbecues.
Tony.
Oh,
Yeah.
Are you dating an actual negress?
I'm not saying anything about anything.
No way.
I'm not saying anything about anything.
Dating a
He's
black
keeping
woman.
the same secrets as Kendrick.
Wow.
I mean, didn't this whole Drake and Kendrick Lamar thing start off like they were just saying like, "I'm the best rapper"?
Yeah.
No, I'm the best rapper, and then it just
Yeah,
went to
No,
your
it's
pedophile.
honestly, there's a woman. There's a woman
They
involved.
threw out a compliment. They were like, "It's the big three," and Kendrick was just like, "No, it isn't." So it wasn't even a slight. It was, I mean, him and Drake haven't liked each other in a long fucking time. But the inciting line is just, it's J. Cole, Drake, and Kendrick. It was a compliment, and he came
Oh,
back.
that's the new big three because I was thinking of Stalin, Roosevelt, and Johnson. The
I wonder
OG
who
big
each
three.
of them would be.
I'm old school. Oh, what's this comment here? Your wife hates you. She does hate me.
But in this economy,
In this economy, she
Bitches.
doesn't have a choice.
She finna listen. Jane, she said, "Turn off that Limp Biscuit," and he looked at her. Give me something to break. He just kept turning it up more and more. Head banging in his fucking Yankees.
I don't know.
When we got married, she said, "Well, the only way this relationship is ending is in a body bag," which was, I think she was saying that, you know, we'll die together. But now I'm beginning to think that there's actually probably.
The thing is that
If you don't hear from me, Jason, you know what happened.
I know who did it.
You know who did it. Protect me. I've said it in public now. You know?
Ironically, the Persians seem to believe in Italian divorces. So, you know,
what
Ooh.
is an Italian divorce?
Oof.
poisoning.
Ah,
Oh yeah, that's true. Sarah would not do something that would be messy that you'd have to clean up. So probably poisoning it would be.
I don't even know where this comment is coming from. Steve said, "Medium ugly niggas with a job winning in this economy."
I mean, according to certain commentators, it's really hard to find a black man with a job. So maybe
Medium ugly niggas.
medium ugly,
Oh,
Yeah, not real ugly though. Just, you know.
oh.
like the kind that it could just be time. Like they might have been better looking once. You just missed your moment.
Fuck.
Oh.
You got the chat today is vicious.
What are they
Well,
saying? They want to see a Stalin rap.
Okay, I got it. Okay, before we go, because it's getting late for you guys, I do have
Yeah.
to show you this video. Pascal, Gene, Derek, you guys know who Raven Simone is?
Oh yeah, I do.
Okay, recently, we did this.
I don't know who she is. Who's she?
Raven Simone was on the Cosby Show towards the end.
Oh, okay. She's one of the.
She was in another show called the Cheetah Girls.
Yep.
In
And then
defense
she
of
was
Gene,
in
he has all
Also
brothers,
Raven.
so I'm sure his younger brothers didn't watch the Cheetah Girls on Disney.
Also, he wasn't in America when that was.
He
on,
also
right?
was not in the States. So Raven
He's not
Simone, also
American?
Raven Simone was on The View. So Raven Simone made this video where she's basically saying, "Stop talking shit about my wife." The first thing I thought was, who the fuck is giving a shit about Raven Simone? And who gives a double shit about your wife?
Oh, I saw this. That's who
So
it is.
so listen, check this out.
Look at the size of Raven's hand, so she can.
Throw it down.
You got the type of hands and wrists Cormac McCarthy describes at the opening of the fucking book. She,
Oh, but from the top rope.
She's a hanging judge. All right.
The video hasn't even Darn. Oh my god.
Yeah, I actually didn't know who
Johan,
these people
bro.
were. I saw this video. This is the second scariest thing I saw. The other thing was a Chinese person beating some African
Beating
workers.
Africans with a belt. Here you go.
Yeah, that's what Belt and
My
Road's
wife
all about,
will
baby.
tell you to stop it in the comments and stop with the death threats in her DMs. It is disrespectful to her and in turn disrespectful to me. Stop it.
It's really become wild. I hope to clear the air right now and letting you all know that I never once said that I.
Like,
I was not expecting that voice. I was not expecting that voice.
I was not expect. Yeah, that's some LA. That is.
I was like, look, like, it was not great.
So is that a Valley Becky voice or a Valley Karen? I'm not sure which one.
Oh,
it is.
whatever it is, it sounds like a fucking nightmare, dude.
But Raven, she really gives me the whole fist, and that's totally fine.
There's no
And
way she's
guys-
taking a fist. Look at the size of them knuckles.
I think you're underestimating her.
Oh my god.
I shared this to my account, guys. I probably should have been careful about that. All right.
Wait a minute. Wait, there's more. There's more.
I did not know who Raven was. I only ever said that I did not grow up watching That's So Raven. I did not watch her as a child. But since getting married and meeting her in 2015, I have seen the majority of her work. I have also been at a lot of this work. So I'm backstage at The View, 25 words or less. The list goes on and on. I love That's So Raven. I think she should have won all the Emmys. I think my wife is endlessly talented. I support her beyond. She also just isn't Raven Simone to me. You guys must try.
I'm sorry, but this looks like this is like the Patty Hearst video.
But people have probably been really mean to her. Like, why does she have to know who? Like, why does she have to watch Raven?
Yeah. I'm mad she recited
Why are you
every.
mad at her? She's just married to this lady. Just leave her alone. Get out of her DMs, people. Stop
Like
sending
who-
the death threats.
Who? is
Otherwise,
sending
you'll
this
end
woman-
up.
First
like
of all, why would anyone care enough? Oh my god!
How? This woman is acting like Raven Simone fans are like Swifties.
Is that your screensaver, Jason?
What?
I was like, that's a little worrying, Jason.
That's your background, bro? Like, is that aspirational or a memory?
But he's fucking.
That Gene put that.
You know,
Also, is this anti-Semitic? That's Magneto, right?
that's Magneto. Well, what's his name? They fired that gay black guy who wrote that X-Men show. So maybe this is the reason why. Man, the new X-Men is dope. You should watch it.
Oh my
X-Men
god!
Yeah, X-Men 97 is absolutely banger.
Connor said, "Yeah."
We got evidence, man. Puffy is anti-Semitic, man. He's a black Israelite, and he's captured Magneto.
Timothy says, "Don't show the new woman that." Jason.
I just want to make a That's So Raven joke, and I can't. I can't figure out how to work it in.
That's what she said.
I quite literally at the
What's with
moment.
them
Actually.
Hey, but that's not what Raven said with them big ass paws. We gonna make it work.
Magneto would not beat the hell out of P. Diddy. I'm scared of P. Diddy, actually. I think he's got skills. I think he'll mesmerize you.
Hold on, we're almost done with this. I want you to hear Raven's last words.
Try and open your minds a little bit and understand there is more behind people that are celebrity. There is real life here. And that's why we're feeling inclined to address this, because I'm receiving so much hate for something that is really just a big spiral of internet misinformation.
And for all of the blue checks out there acting like trolls, sit down. Just thank you. No need. I'm here with Miranda, my
Yo,
Of course, you're there with Miranda.
Why are people mad at? They just seem like a nice couple.
Dude, no one gives a shit about that woman. You think somebody sent her? Who do you
Bro,
think is
I
that
100%
mad at her for anything?
I 100% believe it. Right? 100% believe it. Because people are lunatics. People get on this internet and then they just like are just in people's DMs. Like, have you seen the emails Ben Burgess gets?
Yes, I have.
From me.
Are they deeply sexual?
Well, Vaughn, maybe you should stop sending Ben anti-Semitic emails.
If I don't, who will?
Perhaps of most of the people he debates, he'll do it, but whatever.
Fleece, hold on. We just had a Fleece Johnson.
They
Fleece
said we
Johnson.
called Raven Simone Fleece Johnson.
Raven Simone is not Fleece Johnson.
I like you,
I like
and I
it.
want you.
Come on. We can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way.
Hey.
It's yours.
That woman is trying to tell y'all she needs assistance because she is in a not good relationship. I've seen everything Raven was in. I watched every Cosby episode. I saw the Cheetah Girls twice.
Meanwhile, Raven's over there just breaking donuts with her 2 fingers.
You know,
Watch
I
it
was
again,
actually
bitch.
like impressed with her because they're both got their arms crossed, but it looks very different between the two of them. And you know, I'm just like I'm kind of afraid of Raven Simone now. I don't. That's so Raven.
You
seems
don't want
ominous.
that. You don't
seems
want
ominous.
that, Derek Varn, because she'll stick one of them fat ass hands up your ass, make you talk like a puppet. That's not what you want. That's not what.
Do you think she's been to a Diddy freak off?
Oh yeah, she was like the part of the show.
Like the Elephant Man.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Okay, we better get going because it's very
Let's get
late.
off. Hey, thank you guys. So
Oh, we got what? Wait, we've got one more super chat before the end, though.
wait, somebody said they were scared to date black women because of That's So Raven. That's what scared you from black women, not Whitney Houston. That's so Raven. I thought they all had the ability to see.
That's so Raven scared me as a young man to date black women. I thought they all had the ability to see into the future and judge me. Obviously, now I know all women judge you no matter what. You see, you grow up and you learn and you become a big man. And I'm
Can you
proud
imagine?
of
Can you imagine him finding out that all women do that shit? Are you?
They could all read the future.
Are
God
you
damn
part?
it.
Are you part Negro? Are you?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
Well, this was great. I mean, the champagne room was my career's only protection.
Yeah, same. Same. All that stuff about
I might
me,
as well
like
do-
not getting in trouble at my job. All of a sudden, I'm like, well, maybe Jason was actually warning me to find a reason
also,
to leave early. Like,
that's the one reason that having tenure is good. The
Oh,
only people who
I see how that.
the only, yeah, exactly. The only people who have freedom of speech in the US are A, tenured professors, and B, CEOs of companies.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, since I'm neither of those things, Jason came up with this plan to send all of his friends spiraling into financial ruin because he wants to.
like he wants us to take over his.
It's like if I destroy all of their chances at making money off of
Jason's
art,
trying to, maybe
they'll
Jason's
come out
going
and
to try
hang
and
out.
pimp you out. Watch out, he's going to put that boy pussy on the straw.
So, panel, this is
Watch
the
out! Don't trust him.
Is
He's
Varn
now
weird
with it.
white
I
at
haven't
all,
watched
or just normal white? Now, I don't know what weird white means, but I'm assuming yes, I'm weird white.
White ethnic. I think that's white ethnic. But we don't say white ethnic on this program because it triggers Pascal's PTSD.
Yeah, you can't say that.
Whenever he hears the word "gabba-da-goo," he starts shaking uncontrollably. He's like, he can't go within 20 meters of a Sopranos DVD.
I can imagine Pascal back in the day in New York calling people fucking niggas. This guinea motherfucker over here. Like I can see
He's terrible.
Shit.
He gets violent when he sees an aubergine.
Hey, Pascal got them big ass Raven Simone hands too.
the fucking eggplant joke. Ridiculous, bro. The fucking Muyan. Eddie Murphy taught me everything I needed to know.
God. Oh, God.
Why should I consider a second career writing porn? I have considered it.
Okay, we have to go. Thank you guys. I'll be back Saturday. And we'll be talking. There's a new publishing company that our friends
Dan
Mello and Mike Watson started, and their first book is coming out. And we're going to be talking about that book. I'm super stoked. I think it's something that everyone's going to enjoy. It's definitely we're going to talk about societal collapse. It's fun. It'll be a good time.
It's going to be
Science
a good time.
fiction, good time. Always a good time. Societal collapse, science fiction, heavy metal, punk rock. We're going to talk about it all Saturday. Please tune in. Also, Alex Herbert and I's article went out today. Come as you are. Neoliberal leftism. It's out in Sublation. Read it wherever you're watching. There's a link in the description to it. Thank you to this panel of really great individuals, because this was put together out of love. I hit everybody up last minute because I forgot to send emails out last week. And thank you guys, everyone on the screen. Thank you so much.
Leave a comment, especially an abusive one where we can go and fight with you in there.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. Tell somebody to fuck off.
Yeah, and check out Dan Mello and Mike Watson's Press, Rebo Press, because they're also publishing my book about how the
okay. I
left
didn't know that.
is confused.
Also, yeah, like if your grandmother sending some money, like if your granddad is out of the picture.
And, and also
And she has some equity in California.
Damn.
Because Bert's got
I
plenty of
travel.
equity for her.
You guys are horrible. Thank you guys. Peace.
Peace.
Later.